The world is racing to build the future. From a train that levitates at 500 kilometers per hour to a skyscraper going to unprecedented heights, 2026 is witnessing construction on a scale humanity has never attempted before. Cities are rising from scratch, tunnels are being drilled under seas, and new aircrafts are reshaping warfare. In this video, we are looking at the 26 biggest megaprojects on Earth. From deep below the water to high above the clouds, these are humanity's greatest creations. Don't miss out as we have put together some of the most ambitious megaprojects currently under construction around the world. We start with perhaps the most controversial megaproject on Earth. The Line is Saudi Arabia's audacious plan to build a 170-kilometer-long city in the desert, housing 9 million people in a structure just 200 meters wide. An entire city contained within 2 parallel mirrored skyscrapers stretching across the desert for 170 kilometers. The Line is the flagship project of NEOM, Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman's $500 billion vision to diversify Saudi Arabia's economy beyond oil. The concept sounds like science fiction. No cars, no roads, no emissions. Instead, residents will travel via a high-speed rail running beneath the city, connecting any 2 points in just 20 minutes. The mirrored exterior will reflect the surrounding landscape, while the interior promises vertical farming, AI-powered infrastructure, and a climate-controlled environment despite the harsh desert conditions outside. At 500 meters tall, the Line will be taller than the Empire State Building, but instead of standing alone, it will stretch the distance from Washington, D.C. to Philadelphia. The structure will house everything a city needs: homes, schools, hospitals, entertainment venues, and parks, all stacked vertically within walking distance. The architects claim no resident will ever be more than a 5-minute walk from everything they need. Construction began in 2021, and the scale of earth moving has been staggering. Satellite imagery shows massive excavation work across the desert, with tens of thousands of workers on site. The mirrored facade alone represents an engineering challenge unlike anything attempted before, producing and installing millions of square meters of specialized reflective glass in one of the world's harshest climates. But the Line has proven impossible to build. After spending $500 billion, things have started to unravel. It all started with a massive scale back in 2024, and the project has faced constant scrutiny and controversy ever since. Initial plans called for the entire 170-kilometer structure to be completed by 2030, but a dramatic scale back has now been confirmed. A Bloomberg investigation claimed only 2.4 kilometers might be completed by 2030, with the resident population target reduced from 1.5 million to just 300,000. Saudi officials have disputed these reports, insisting the project remains on track, but the contradictions have fueled skepticism. From the start, people behind NEOM were guilty of making claims that were untethered from reality. There were questions like, do we have the technology to build something like this? And more importantly, does Saudi Arabia, despite all its oil money, have the funds to complete what they are proposing? So far, the answer is no. When it was first proposed, NEOM was supposed to cost just over $1 trillion, which is already an eye-watering amount, but that number has only gotten bigger. According to the Wall Street Journal reports, Saudi Arabia will need to spend more than $8.5 trillion to bring NEOM to life. For perspective, that is more than 25 times the kingdom's annual budget. This deficit is projected to rise further because of the declining oil prices. According to IMF estimates, Saudi Arabia needs to sell oil at $100 a barrel to balance its funding for NEOM till 2030. However, the kingdom has seen a decline in its exports, with a price per barrel in the low 60s. The only other way to make up the funding gap is to get money from private investors and foreign governments. But despite the inflated numbers, the money coming in from foreign sources is way below expectations. Even the cutback version of the Line is insane. Nothing of this scale has ever been built, and it will be an unprecedented feat of engineering if it really happens. Despite the controversies, construction continues. The Saudi government has allocated billions in its 2025 and 2026 budgets specifically for NEOM projects, signaling continued commitment. Whether the line ultimately stretches 170 kilometers or ends up as something far more modest, it remains one of the most ambitious urban experiments ever attempted. The project represents a fundamental challenge to conventional urban planning. Can you really stack everything vertically and eliminate the need for cars? Will people actually want to live in such a radically different environment? The world is watching to see if Saudi Arabia can pull off what many experts consider impossible. If it succeeds, the line could revolutionize how we think about cities. If it fails, it will stand as a monument to unchecked ambition. From this linear city in the desert, we now shift to an EA1 equally radical urban experiment, but this time floating on water. Maldives is disappearing. With 80% of the island nation sitting less than 1 meter above sea level, rising oceans threaten to make it uninhabitable within this century. But rather than accept this fate, the Maldives is working on a solution. They are building humanity's first true floating city, a development that will rise with the tides. Located in a lagoon just 10 minutes by boat from the capital Malé, the floating city is designed to house 20,000 residents across 5,000 floating units. But unlike houseboats or floating platforms, this megaproject is a collective urban environment with homes, restaurants, schools, and even a hospital floating on the ocean. The project is a collaboration between the government of Maldives and Dutch Docklands, a company with decades of experience building floating structures in the Netherlands. And they have come up with a design that preserves the water aesthetic while ensuring practicality. Inspired by brain coral, the city will have hexagonal modules connected by floating walkways and canals. The modules are constructed from marine-grade materials designed to withstand tropical storms and rising sea levels for at least 100 years. Each floating module is anchored to the seabed using telescopic mooring piles that allow the structures to rise and fall with the tides while remaining stable. The lagoon's natural protective barrier of surrounding islands shields the city from the strongest ocean currents, while the design of the modules themselves creates a natural coral-growing environment underneath. The developers claim the city will actually increase marine biodiversity rather than harm it. Construction began in 2022, and the first modules were launched in 2023. By 2024, several residential units were already floating in the lagoon, and the developers reported strong interest from both Maldivians and international buyers. The modular construction approach allows the city to grow organically. New units can be added as demand increases, expanding well beyond the initial 20,000 resident target. While this idea to beat the sea rise is revolutionary, turning it into a reality was no easy feat. Building on water requires completely different construction techniques than traditional development. Every structure must be lightweight yet durable, flexible yet stable. The city will run on innovation for all its utilities. Freshwater comes from rooftop solar-powered desalination plants. Sewage is treated on-site using marine-grade systems that produce clean water suitable for irrigation. Electricity comes entirely from solar panels covering rooftops and floating solar farms in the lagoon. Transportation within the city relies on boats and electric buggies that run on the floating walkways connecting different neighborhoods. The developers have banned cars entirely, promoting a pedestrian and water-based lifestyle. Several neighborhoods are already taking shape, each with its own character, from affordable housing units for Maldivian families to luxury villas with private lagoon access. But how much does it cost to get a floating home here? Property prices range from $150,000 for a studio to over $1 million for luxury villas. While some may consider this expensive, homeownership is more accessible than in Malé, where land scarcity has driven prices sky high. The government hopes the floating city will ease pressure on the overcrowded capital, while demonstrating that rising sea levels don't have to mean abandoning the Maldives. This isn't just about saving one island nation. The technology and experience gained here could be applied to coastal cities worldwide. With hundreds of millions of people living in low-lying coastal areas threatened by sea level rise, floating cities might represent a viable adaptation strategy. The Netherlands is already exploring floating neighborhoods in Amsterdam and Rotterdam, Similar projects are being studied in French Polynesia, South Korea, and the Philippines. Despite the progress, questions remain. Could floating cities become a long-term solution against rising sea levels, or would they remain a luxury adaptation for the wealthy? For now, the floating city may only seem attractive to stable households with no foreseeable future for the most vulnerable populations. Environmental groups have also expressed concerns about the long-term impacts of large-scale floating developments on marine ecosystems, despite the developers' coral-growing claims. Nevertheless, the Maldives is pushing forward. The first residents are expected to move in this year, making this one of the world's first inhabited floating cities. Whether it's a glimpse of humanity's amphibious future or an expensive novelty remains to be seen. But as seas continue rising, the world is watching closely. From floating on water, we now move to another Chinese megacity, but this time rising from solid ground with artificial intelligence at its core. While the line captures headlines with its linear design and the floating city battles rising seas, China is quietly building something equally ambitious in the interior province of Sichuan. Chengdu Future City is a 1,275 square kilometer smart city being built from scratch on the outskirts of Chengdu, one of China's fastest growing metropolitan areas. With a budget exceeding $80 billion, Chengdu Future City aims to accommodate 4.5 million residents by 2035, relieving pressure on the congested main city with a sustainable urban development. The master plan divides the development into distinct zones: a tech innovation district, an advanced manufacturing hub, a cultural center, and extensive residential neighborhoods, all connected by autonomous vehicles, smart metros, and pedestrian-friendly green corridors. What makes Chengdu Future City truly futuristic is the integration of artificial intelligence and data systems into everyday urban life. The future city will have a centralized city brain that monitors all the essential services: traffic patterns, energy consumption, waste management, air quality, and emergency services will all be tracked in real time, automatically optimizing city operations. Traffic lights will adjust to actual traffic flow rather than fixed timers. Energy grids will prioritize renewable sources and route power where it's needed most. Waste collection trucks will receive dynamic routing based on fill levels at collection points throughout the city. And the population is not far from moving in. Construction began in 2019, and progress has been astonishingly rapid even by Chinese standards. Satellite imagery from 2024 shows thousands of buildings already standing, with entire neighborhoods complete and occupied. The city's first metro lines opened in 2023, connecting the new development to central Chengdu. By 2026, over 800,000 people are expected to be living and working in Future City, with major tech companies including Huawei, Tencent, and ByteDance establishing regional headquarters there. The architectural approach is something to marvel at. Buildings are required to meet strict energy efficiency standards, with most featuring green roofs, solar panels, and rainwater collection systems. Parks and green spaces occupy almost half of the city's total area, far higher than most Chinese cities, with extensive cycling and walking paths connecting neighborhoods. The city's layout prioritizes walkability over the sprawling, car-dependent designs that characterized earlier Chinese urban development. The economic strategy centers on attracting high-tech industries and research institutions. The Chengdu Future City Innovation Center offers subsidized space for startups, while major universities have established satellite campuses. The goal is to create a complete innovation ecosystem similar to Silicon Valley or Shenzhen, but with better urban planning from the start. Tax incentives and streamlined regulations have already attracted thousands of tech companies, creating a boom in high-paying jobs that's drawing young professionals from across China. Transportation infrastructure is unique in its own ways. Multiple metro lines connect Future City to the rest of Chengdu, with journey times to the main downtown area under 30 minutes. Within Future City itself, an extensive network of autonomous shuttle buses operates on dedicated lanes, providing free transportation throughout the development. The city's digital roads are embedded with sensors that communicate with vehicles, optimizing traffic flow and improving safety. Housing ranges from affordable apartments for young professionals to luxury high-rises, though the majority falls into the middle-income category. The government has mandated that a third of housing units remain affordable to prevent future city from becoming an exclusive enclave. So far, demand has outstripped supply, with new residential buildings selling out within days of going on the market. Environmental features are particularly impressive. The city's power comes primarily from renewable sources, including massive solar farms on surrounding hillsides and wind turbines in nearby mountains. An advanced water management system captures and treats all wastewater, recycling it for irrigation and industrial use. The city aims to achieve carbon neutrality by 2030, 5 years ahead of China's national target. Critics note that for all its smart city technology, Chengdu Future City still represents the Chinese government's top-down approach to urban planning. Residents have little say in how the city develops, and the extensive surveillance systems, marketed as public safety and efficiency tools, raise privacy concerns. Every movement within the city can be tracked through facial recognition cameras, smartphone apps, and vehicle monitoring systems. Nevertheless, Chengdu Future City represents China's vision for 21st century urbanism: dense, sustainable, technologically integrated, and built at a speed Western countries can barely comprehend. As climate change and urbanization pressures cities worldwide, the lessons learned here may prove valuable far beyond China's borders. From this AI-powered Chinese megacity, we move to Central Asia, where Uzbekistan is building its own vision of the future. While Saudi Arabia, the Maldives, and China build their futuristic cities, Uzbekistan has quietly launched one of Central Asia's most ambitious urban development projects. New Tashkent, officially called the Tashkent City International Business Center, is a $12 billion mixed-use development rising on the outskirts of Uzbekistan's capital. The project aims to transform Tashkent into a regional financial and business hub, attracting international investment to a country that, until recently, had one of the world's most closed economies. New Tashkent is a business district 3 times the size of Manhattan built from scratch. At the project's heart is the Tashkent Tower, a 400-meter super-tall skyscraper that will be Central Asia's tallest building and among the 50 tallest in the world. The tower's design incorporates traditional Uzbek architectural motifs into a modern glass and steel structure, with the facade's geometric patterns inspired by Islamic art found in Samarkand and Bukhara's historic monuments. At night, programmable LED lighting will illuminate these patterns, making the building a glowing beacon visible across the city. After years of planning, construction of New Tashkent began in 2018 under President Shavkat Mirziyoyev. A new economic reform program had opened Uzbekistan to foreign investment after decades of isolation, and New Tashkent was the biggest beneficiary. The development is a public-private partnership involving Uzbek construction companies and international investors from the UAE, South Korea, and Turkey. By 2024, the first residential towers were already occupied. The project has also spurred related development across Tashkent, with property values rising and new hotels, restaurants, and services opening to serve the growing business community. Another critical component for any new development in an arid country like Uzbekistan is water management. New Tashkent incorporates rainwater harvesting systems, drought-resistant landscaping, and advanced water recycling that reduces consumption by 40% compared to conventional developments. Solar panels on building rooftops supplement the power grid, and the district aims for LEED Gold certification for sustainability. Cultural elements are woven throughout the development. Public art installations feature work from Uzbek artists, and several buildings incorporate traditional architectural elements like ornate entrances and decorative tile work. The project includes a museum dedicated to Uzbekistan's Silk Road history and a performing arts center designed to showcase traditional Uzbek music and dance alongside contemporary performances. While the plans for New Tashkent are innovative and the authorities hope for an economic revolution, the reality may turn out to be very different. Despite reforms, the country remains relatively poor with GDP per capita around $2,000, so there are legitimate concerns over whether Uzbekistan's economy can support such an ambitious project. There are those who fear that new Tashkent will become a white elephant, impressive buildings standing largely empty because there isn't enough demand. The government's response is that you must build the infrastructure first to attract the investment, and early occupancy rates have been encouraging. The project also faces geopolitical uncertainties. Uzbekistan is navigating relationships with Russia, China, and the West, and shifts in these relationships could affect foreign investment flows. The development's success depends heavily on political stability and continued economic reforms, factors not entirely within the developer's control. Nevertheless, by 2026, New Tashkent is taking definite shape. The skyline is rising, residents and businesses are moving in, and the vision of a Central Asian business hub is becoming tangible reality. Whether it ultimately succeeds in its ambitions, New Tashkent represents Uzbekistan's determination to claim a place in the globalized 21st century economy. From entire cities transforming skylines, we now look to individual towers pushing the absolute limits of height. For over a decade, one question has captivated the skyscraper world. When will we finally build a kilometer-high tower? That answer is taking shape on the Red Sea coast in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia, where Jeddah Tower, originally called Kingdom Tower, is designed to exceed 1,000 meters, making it the world's tallest building by a significant margin. At its planned height of 1,008 meters, Jeddah Tower will dwarf the current record holder, Dubai's Burj Khalifa, by over 180 meters. The tower's slender aerodynamic design tapers as it rises, with a 3-petal footprint that reduces wind loads, a critical consideration at these extreme heights. The facade will be covered in high-performance glass that can withstand the intense Saudi heat while providing unobstructed views across the Red Sea. The project is backed by Prince Al-Walid bin Talal's Kingdom Holding Company and is the centerpiece of Jeddah Economic City, a 5.3 million square meter development along the coast. Jeddah Tower will contain luxury apartments, a Four Seasons hotel, office space, and the world's highest observation deck at 664 meters, about 100 meters higher than the Burj Khalifa's current record. Construction began in 2013 with immense fanfare, but the project has faced repeated delays and setbacks. By 2018, construction had reached about 60 stories, roughly 1/3 of the planned height, before grinding to a halt. The stoppage was officially attributed to labor issues and contractual disputes, but it also coincided with Saudi Arabia's anti-corruption purge in which Prince Al-Walid was detained for nearly 3 months, along with his assets frozen. The tower's foundations alone represent an engineering marvel. The site sits on challenging geology, layers of weak coral rock overlying harder limestone. Engineers had to drive 270 piles, each 110 meters deep, to reach stable bedrock. The foundation slab is 5 meters thick and took weeks to pour in a continuous operation, setting records for concrete placement in Saudi Arabia. This foundation must support not just the tower's immense weight, but also the massive wind forces acting on such a tall, slender structure. Wind engineering has been crucial to the design. At heights exceeding 1 kilometer, wind speeds can reach 200 kilometers per hour or more. Adrian Smith plus Gordon Gill Architecture, the firm behind the design, used advanced computational fluid dynamics modeling to optimize the tower's shape. The 3-petal design disrupts vortex formation, the spiraling wind patterns that can cause dangerous oscillations in tall buildings. Even so, the upper floors will experience noticeable movement during high winds, requiring advanced damping systems to ensure comfort. The tower's structural system uses a reinforced concrete core with external columns, allowing for column-free interior spaces. Vertical transportation is another challenge. Moving people efficiently up and down 167 floors requires one of the world's most sophisticated elevator systems. The building will have 59 elevators, including double-decker units and ultra-high-speed elevators, capable of traveling at 10 meters per second. These elevators must operate in a building that experiences temperature differentials of 30+ degrees between top and bottom. Construction resumed in 2023 following renewed investment and reorganization of the project team. Saudi Arabia's Vision 2030 initiative has prioritized major development projects, and Jeddah Tower has been repositioned as a symbol of the kingdom's ambitions. New contractors have been brought in, and construction is now progressing with visible activity on site. Current projections suggest the structural work could complete by 2028, with the building set to open by 2030. But does Saudi Arabia or the world need such an extreme tower? Question marks still surround the utility of Burj Khalifa, and a similar fate might be waiting for the Jeddah Tower. The upper floors will inevitably be less practical than lower ones, extremely expensive to build per square meter, and challenging to access and maintain. Critics argue that the tower is primarily a vanity project, a monument to wealth and ambition rather than a sound economic investment. But supporters counter that iconic buildings have always served purposes beyond mere function. They attract attention, investment, and prestige. The Burj Khalifa transformed Dubai's global image, and Jeddah Tower aims to do the same for Saudi Arabia's second city. Environmental considerations are increasingly part of the conversation. The tower is designed to lead platinum standards with high-performance glazing, advanced cooling systems, and water conservation features that reduce consumption by 40% compared to conventional buildings. Solar panels on exterior terraces will supplement the power supply, though the tower will inevitably be an energy-intensive structure. The competition to build the world's tallest building continues. Dubai has announced plans for the Dubai Creek Tower, which may exceed 1,300 meters, though construction remains in very early stages. China has discussed kilometer-high towers for major cities. But for now, Jeddah Tower stands as the closest to reality, with construction actively underway and a realistic path to completion. If, or when, Jeddah Tower is completed, it will represent more than an engineering achievement. It will mark a psychological threshold, proving that kilometer-high structures are genuinely possible and likely opening the door to even taller buildings. The race to the sky continues, and Jeddah is determined to lead it. From Saudi Arabia's vertical ambitions, we head to Dubai, where a twisted tower is redefining skyscraper aesthetics. Dubai's skyline, already one of the world's most dramatic, is about to gain its most visually distinctive tower yet. Burj Binghatti is a residential super-tall rising 112 stories and 640 meters in the Business Bay district, featuring a remarkable twisted design that will make it one of the most recognizable buildings on Earth. Designed through a collaboration between developer Binghatti Developers and Jacob & Comers, the luxury watchmaker, the tower's form is inspired by haute horlogerie, the intricate mechanisms and elegant curves found in fine Swiss watches. The building literally twists as it rises, with each floor rotated slightly from the one below, creating a spiraling effect that reduces wind loads while producing dramatic visual impact. At 640 meters, Burj Binghatti will rank among the world's 15 tallest buildings and become Dubai's third tallest after the Burj Khalifa and the Marina 101. But its height is almost secondary to its sculptural quality. The facade features vertical fins and geometric patterns that catch sunlight differently throughout the day, making the building appear to change color and texture. At night, integrated LED lighting will transform the tower into a glowing, twisted ribbon visible across the city. Construction officially began in 2022 with foundation work on a challenging site in Business Bay, one of Dubai's most densely developed districts. The tower sits adjacent to the Dubai Water Canal, requiring deep foundations to ensure stability in soil with relatively high water content. The foundation system consists of a massive concrete mat supported by 75-meter-deep piles drilled into bedrock beneath the canal sediments. The twisting form creates significant structural challenges. Unlike conventional straight towers where the structural system can be repeated on each floor, Burj Binghatti's rotation means every floor is unique. The building uses a reinforced concrete core for rigidity, with exterior columns that follow the twisted geometry. Advanced computer modeling was essential to ensure the structure could withstand both gravity loads and the powerful wind forces acting on such a tall, sculptural form. The tower will contain 700 ultra-luxury residences, ranging from two-bedroom apartments to penthouses spanning entire floors. Amenities include multiple pools, a spa and wellness center, private cinema, business center, and what developers call sky lobbies, communal spaces on high floors offering panoramic views. The penthouses will feature private infinity pools and outdoor terraces, impressive engineering achievements given the building's height and slender profile. Dubai's luxury real estate market drives projects like Burj Binghatti. Despite global economic uncertainties, demand for high-end properties in Dubai remains strong, fueled by wealthy individuals from across the Middle East, South Asia, Europe, and increasingly, Africa. The absence of property taxes, along with Dubai's political stability and luxury lifestyle offerings, continues attracting international buyers. Binghatti Developers reports that apartments in the tower are selling quickly despite prices exceeding $1,000 per square foot. The construction schedule is aggressive even by Dubai standards. The tower is expected to top out in 2026, with completion and handover to residents by late 2027 or early 2028. Dubai's construction industry has developed extraordinary efficiency over decades of building supertalls, with contractors able to add multiple floors per week during peak construction periods. The tower's modular design, with prefabricated facade elements and MEP systems, accelerates the build process. Sustainability features include high-performance glazing that reduces cooling loads, LED lighting throughout, water-efficient fixtures, and a building management system that optimizes energy use based on occupancy and weather conditions. The tower aims for LEED Gold certification, though critics note that any super-tall residential tower is inherently energy-intensive regardless of efficiency measures. The project also highlights Dubai's continued confidence in vertical growth despite questions about long-term sustainability. The city has hundreds of completed skyscrapers and dozens more under construction, raising concerns about oversupply. However, Dubai has repeatedly defied predictions of real estate bubbles bursting, and developers remain bullish on the city's future as a global hub for business, tourism, and wealthy residents seeking a cosmopolitan lifestyle in a tax-advantageous environment. Burj Binghatti represents the evolution of supertall design from purely functional towers to sculptural landmarks. Modern structural engineering and computer modeling have freed architects to create forms that would have been impossible just decades ago. As cities compete for global attention and investment, distinctive architecture becomes increasingly important, and few buildings will be as visually striking as this twisted tower on Dubai's skyline. From Dubai, we travel east to Tokyo, where Japan is building a tower that's as much about sustainability as height. Tokyo is getting a new icon. The Tokyo Torch, officially known as Torch Tower, is a 390-meter mixed-use skyscraper that will become Japan's tallest building when it completes in 2028. But this isn't just another height race. Tokyo Torch represents Japan's commitment to sustainable urban development and disaster resilience in one of the world's most earthquake-prone cities. Located in the Otemachi district, right in Tokyo's central business core, the tower is the centerpiece of a redevelopment transforming aging office buildings into a vibrant mixed-use district. The project is being developed by Mitsubishi Estate, one of Japan's largest real estate companies, with a total investment exceeding $5 billion, including the surrounding site development. The tower's name comes from its distinctive crown, a series of terraces and platforms at the top designed to resemble a torch flame. These upper levels will house an observation deck and public spaces offering 360-degree views across Tokyo, including Mount Fuji on clear days. The flame will be illuminated at night, creating a glowing beacon in Tokyo's already spectacular nighttime skyline. Tokyo Torch will contain 63 floors above ground and 4 below, with office space occupying most floors, a luxury hotel on upper levels, and retail and cultural spaces at the base. The ground-level plaza is designed as a public gathering space, a rarity in Tokyo's dense downtown, with restaurants, cafes, and event space. The development includes a 2,000-seat concert hall, making the complex a cultural destination beyond just another office tower. Earthquake resistance is paramount in Tokyo, where the Big One, a magnitude 8+ earthquake directly beneath the city, is considered inevitable within the next few decades. Tokyo Torch employs Japan's most advanced seismic technology, including a base isolation system that allows the building to move independently of the ground during an earthquake. This system consists of massive rubber and steel bearings that absorb seismic energy, dramatically reducing the shaking experienced by the building. Additionally, the tower features tuned mass dampers, enormous pendulums weighing hundreds of tons suspended near the top of the building. These dampers swing in opposition to the building's movement during earthquakes or high winds, counteracting the motion and keeping the structure stable. Japanese engineering firms have perfected these systems over decades, and Tokyo Torch represents the state-of-the-art in seismic protection. The construction process itself demonstrates Japanese precision and innovation. Foundation work began in 2020 with the excavation of the massive basement levels, which required removing soil contaminated by decades of industrial activity while maintaining support for adjacent buildings in Tokyo's dense urban core. The main structural work began in 2021, with the tower steadily rising through 2024 and 2025. Sustainability is woven throughout the design. The building aims for LEED Platinum certification and will generate a portion of its power from rooftop solar panels and fuel cells. The facade uses high-performance glass with advanced coatings that reduce heat gain while maximizing natural light, crucial for reducing Tokyo's legendary summer cooling loads. Rainwater collection systems and greywater recycling will reduce water consumption by half compared to conventional buildings. Perhaps most innovative is the district energy system. Tokyo Torch connects to a network of underground pipes supplying heating and cooling to multiple buildings in the Otemachi district. This district system is far more efficient than individual building systems, reducing energy consumption and carbon emissions across the entire area. The tower will also include emergency generators and water storage capable of supporting operations for 72 hours after a major disaster, critical infrastructure in earthquake-prone Tokyo. The economic rationale for Tokyo Torch reflects Japan's corporate culture and real estate dynamics. Tokyo's prime office space commands premium rents, and there's strong demand from multinational corporations wanting prestigious headquarters addresses. The tower's tenant list already includes major Japanese corporations and international banks. The hotel will be operated by a luxury brand, targeting business travelers and wealthy tourists drawn to Tokyo's blend of traditional culture and cutting-edge modernity. The construction timeline has been remarkably stable, unusual for a project of this scale. Japanese construction management emphasizes meticulous planning, standardized processes, and reliable execution, resulting in fewer delays than comparable Western projects. The tower is scheduled to top out in 2026, with interior fit-out continuing through 2027 and opening in 2028. Tokyo Torch also reflects broader trends in Tokyo's development. The city is preparing to host increasing numbers of international visitors while upgrading its infrastructure to remain competitive with other Asian financial centers like Singapore and Hong Kong. The project is one of several major redevelopments in central Tokyo, all aiming to create more walkable, attractive urban districts that blend work, culture, and public space. When completed, Tokyo Torch will stand as a testament to Japanese engineering excellence and a symbol of Tokyo's continued evolution as a global city. It will be more than just the tallest building in Japan. It will be a model of how super talls can integrate into dense urban environments while prioritizing sustainability and resilience. From Tokyo's refined engineering, we head to Mexico City, where Latin America is staking its claim in the super tall race. Latin America has historically lagged behind Asia and the Middle East in the race for super tall skyscrapers. But that's changing with Torre Rise, a 396-meter tower under construction in Monterrey, Mexico. When completed, It will be the tallest building in Latin America and place a Mexican city on the global map of super tall urban architecture. Monterrey, Mexico's third largest city, is an industrial and business hub often called the capital of the North. The city has long been one of Mexico's wealthiest and most modern, home to major corporations, including Cemex, one of the world's largest cement producers, and numerous manufacturing operations serving the North American market. Torre Rise reflects Monterrey's ambitions to evolve beyond its industrial roots into a cosmopolitan business and cultural center. The tower will rise 110 stories in the Valle Oriente district, a rapidly developing area on Monterrey's east side. The building will contain luxury residences, office space, a five-star hotel, and retail areas, along with amenities including multiple swimming pools, a spa, restaurants, and what's being marketed as Latin America's highest observation deck at 360 meters, offering views across Monterrey's dramatic mountainous landscape. The design, by local firm BNKR Arquitectura, features a sleek glass facade with vertical elements that give the tower a distinctive ribbed appearance. The building's slender profile, essential for achieving super tall status on a relatively constrained site, creates engineering challenges, particularly wind resistance. Monterrey experiences strong winds, especially during winter months when cold fronts push down from the north. The design incorporates aerodynamic features to reduce wind loads and minimize movement in the upper floors. Foundation work began in 2021, a complex undertaking in Monterrey's geology. The city sits in a valley with underlying limestone formations and underground water flows. Engineers had to drill piles to depths of 80 meters to reach stable bedrock, then construct a massive reinforced concrete mat foundation to distribute the tower's weight. The excavation alone took over a year, removing tens of thousands of cubic meters of earth while managing groundwater and maintaining support for adjacent buildings. Structural work on the tower itself began in 2022, with construction progressing steadily through 2024 and 2025. The building uses a reinforced concrete core with external columns, a system that provides rigidity against wind and seismic forces while allowing flexible floor plans. Monterrey sits in a moderate seismic zone, not as active as Mexico City, but significant enough to require earthquake-resistant design. The tower incorporates flexible connections and damping systems to absorb seismic energy. One remarkable aspect of Torre Rise is its financing and development structure. Unlike many super-tall projects backed by sovereign wealth funds or international mega-developers, Torre Rise is primarily a Mexican project funded by local investors and banks. This has created national pride around the tower. It's seen as Mexico asserting its place among global cities, built with Mexican capital and expertise. The residential units are targeting wealthy Mexicans and expatriates working in Monterrey's business sector. Prices range from $500,000 for smaller units to over $5 million for penthouses, expensive by Mexican standards, but modest compared to comparable properties in Miami, New York, or Dubai. The hotel component will be managed by an international luxury brand, not yet publicly announced, aiming to attract business travelers and tourists to Monterrey. Economic considerations extend beyond the tower itself. Developers and city officials hope Torre Rise will catalyze broader development in Valle Oriente, attracting additional investment in hotels, office space, retail, and residential projects. The tower is positioned as an anchor for Monterrey's transformation into a more diverse, service-oriented economy complementing its industrial base. Environmental features include energy-efficient glazing, LED lighting, water recycling systems, and building management systems optimizing energy use. The tower aims for LEED Silver certification, ambitious for Mexico, where green building practices are less common than in the US or Europe. The project is also installing electric vehicle charging stations and bicycle storage to encourage sustainable transportation, though Monterrey's car-centric culture means adoption will likely be gradual. Construction challenges have included labor shortages, supply chain disruptions affecting imported materials like specialized glass and elevator components, and inflation driving up costs. The project has remained on track despite these issues, with developers reporting strong sales of residential units and solid interest from commercial tenants. Torre Rise is scheduled to top out in 2027, with completion and opening in 2028 or early 2029. When finished, it will not only be Latin America's tallest building, but also a symbol of Mexican ambition and capability. It demonstrates that super-tall development isn't limited to petrostates or Asian tigers. Emerging economies with strong local business communities can compete on the global stage. The tower also raises questions about development priorities. Monterrey, like many Mexican cities, faces challenges with water scarcity, traffic congestion, and inequality. Critics argue that resources spent on a vanity tower could address pressing infrastructure needs. Supporters counter that iconic developments attract investment and talent that benefits the broader economy. Whether Torre Rise ultimately proves a catalyst for Monterrey's transformation or a monument to misplaced priorities remains to be seen. We now move from towers to power as we look at some of the biggest dams and renewable energy projects under construction in 2026. Deep in the Himalayas, at the confluence of the Yarlung-Tsangpo River's dramatic gorges, China is building what will become the world's largest hydroelectric power station. The Medog hydropower station in Tibet will have an installed capacity exceeding 60,000 megawatts, 3 times larger than China's Three Gorges Dam, and more than 5 times the capacity of Brazil's Itaipu Dam. The project's location is both its greatest advantage and biggest challenge. The Yarlung-Tsangpo River, known as the Brahmaputra, when it flows into India and Bangladesh, drops nearly 2,000 meters in elevation over a relatively short distance through Tibet's Yarlung-Tsangpo Grand Canyon. This dramatic elevation change represents enormous hydroelectric potential, with more concentrated hydraulic head than perhaps anywhere else on Earth. Engineers estimate the river section's theoretical hydropower capacity at over 100,000 megawatts more than all of Canada's current electricity generation. The Medog station will harness this potential through a series of underground powerhouses and tunnels. Rather than a single massive dam, the project involves multiple intake structures feeding water through enormous tunnels to turbines located hundreds of meters below ground. This run-of-river approach minimizes the reservoir size and environmental impact compared to traditional high dam designs, while maximizing power generation from the river's dramatic elevation drop. Construction began in earnest in 2023 after years of surveys, environmental studies, and preliminary work. The project's remote location, at elevations exceeding 2,000 meters and requiring travel through some of the world's most challenging terrain, makes logistics extraordinarily difficult. Roads had to be carved through mountainsides, bridges built across gorges, and temporary facilities constructed to house thousands of workers in an area where infrastructure was previously minimal. The engineering challenges are immense. The region experiences frequent earthquakes. Tibet sits where the Indian and Eurasian tectonic plates collide, creating the Himalayas. Any structures must withstand powerful seismic forces. The underground powerhouses are being excavated from solid rock, requiring drilling and blasting on a massive scale. Each powerhouse will be a cathedral-sized cavern housing multiple turbines, transformers, and associated equipment, all carved from the mountain. Water conveyance tunnels present their own challenges. The main tunnels will measure up to 10 meters in diameter and stretch for dozens of kilometers through the mountains. Rock quality varies substantially, from solid granite to fractured, unstable zones. Tunnel boring machines, enormous mechanical moles that grind through rock, are being used where geology permits, while traditional drill and blast methods handle unstable sections. Groundwater inflows complicate excavation, requiring constant pumping and specialized waterproofing. The turbines themselves will be specially designed for Medog's unique conditions. The extremely high hydraulic head, the pressure from water dropping 2,000 meters, creates extraordinary forces. Turbines must withstand not just high pressures, but but also cavitation damage from water vaporizing and then collapsing violently against metal surfaces. Chinese manufacturers are developing turbines specifically for these conditions, drawing on experience from earlier high-head hydropower projects, but scaling up significantly. Environmental concerns are substantial. The Yarlung-Changpo region contains unique ecosystems, including rare and endangered species. Altering the river's flow patterns could affect aquatic habitats and downstream ecosystems in India and Bangladesh. Chinese authorities insist the run-of-river design minimizes environmental impacts by maintaining most natural flow patterns, but independent verification is difficult given limited transparency about the project. Geopolitical tensions add complexity. India and Bangladesh depend heavily on Brahmaputra water for agriculture, drinking water, and their own hydropower projects. Any Chinese development on the upper river raises concerns about water security downstream. China has provided limited information about Medog's potential impacts on downstream flows, frustrating Indian and Bangladeshi officials. The dam could theoretically be used to regulate flows, giving China leverage over downstream countries, a concern that transcends pure hydrology and enters security considerations. The project's scale requires purpose-built construction equipment and facilities. Concrete batching plants have been established near the construction sites to supply the millions of cubic meters needed for intake structures, powerhouses, and supporting facilities. Cement must be transported hundreds of kilometers through difficult terrain, requiring constant truck convoys along dangerous mountain roads. Worker accommodation includes entire temporary villages with housing, medical facilities, dining halls, and recreation areas necessary to retain workers in such remote, harsh conditions. Power transmission from Medog will require extensive new infrastructure. Ultra-high voltage transmission lines will carry electricity thousands of kilometers to load centers in eastern China. These transmission lines must traverse some of China's most challenging terrain, crossing mountains, rivers, and areas with severe weather. The transmission infrastructure investment will rival the power station's own costs, reflecting the challenges of utilizing remote hydropower resources. Timeline projections are uncertain. China officially states the project will begin generating power by 2028, but most observers consider this optimistic given the construction challenges. More realistic estimates suggest first power by 2030 or later, with full completion potentially requiring most of the 2030s. However, Chinese infrastructure development has repeatedly defied skeptics' pessimistic timelines, so dismissing official targets would be premature. Economic rationale centers on China's energy needs and climate commitments. Despite massive renewable energy investments, China still relies heavily on coal power. Medog's enormous clean energy generation will help displace coal while providing reliable baseload power that intermittent renewables like solar and wind cannot match. The project aligns with China's pledge to reach carbon neutrality by 2060, requiring massive clean energy additions in coming decades. Strategic considerations also matter. Demonstrating capability to build in Tibet's extreme conditions reinforces Chinese sovereignty claims over the contested region. The project provides economic development and employment in Tibet, which Beijing sees as essential for stability and integration. And control over Himalayan water resources gives China strategic leverage in regional geopolitics, particularly regarding India. Critics question whether such mega-dams remain appropriate given climate change uncertainties, seismic risks, and ecosystem impacts. Smaller distributed renewable energy might be safer and more flexible than concentrated hydropower that could be catastrophically damaged by earthquakes or other disasters. But China's government sees Medog as essential for its energy future and appears committed to overcoming whatever obstacles arise. By 2026, construction will be well advanced with tunneling progressing, some powerhouse excavation complete, and installation of the first equipment likely beginning. The project's true scale will become more apparent as the underground facilities take shape. Medog represents engineering ambition on a scale matched by few projects anywhere, harnessing one of Earth's most powerful rivers in one of its most challenging environments. Whether it ultimately succeeds as planned or faces setbacks and scaling back remains to be seen, but there's no doubt about the audacity of the vision. China is not stopping in Tibet, as construction continues on a water transfer project, the scale of which has never been matched in history. China's South-North Water Transfer Project is arguably the most ambitious water infrastructure project ever attempted. This $80 billion undertaking aims to divert 44.8 billion cubic meters of water annually from the water-rich Yangtze River basin in southern China to the water-scarce north, where cities including Beijing face chronic shortages. The project consists of 3 routes: eastern, central, and western, spanning over 4,300 kilometers of canals, tunnels, and pipelines. The problem is straightforward. China's north has 64% of the country's farmland, but only 19% of its water resources. The south, meanwhile, has abundant water but less agricultural land. This mismatch has become critical as northern cities and industries expand while groundwater aquifers deplete. Beijing, home to over 20 million people, relies heavily on groundwater that's being extracted faster than it replenishes. Without new water sources, northern China faces severe water constraints that could limit economic growth and reduce living standards. The eastern route, completed in 2013, runs 1,156 kilometers from the Yangtze River near Yangzhou to Tianjin, largely following the ancient Grand Canal. This route required extensive upgrades to the canal, pumping stations to lift water over the terrain, and water treatment facilities because the route passes through heavily polluted areas. The eastern route now delivers over 8 billion cubic meters annually to Shandong Province and Tianjin, though water quality challenges persist despite treatment efforts. The central route, completed in 2014, is more impressive engineering. It runs 1,432 kilometers from the Danjiangkou Reservoir on the Han River, a Yangtze tributary, to Beijing, mostly through new open channels and tunnels. Unlike the eastern route, the central route uses gravity flow, no pumping required, because the source elevation is higher than the destinations. This route crosses over 200 rivers and roads via aqueducts and undercrossings, including a 7.2-kilometer tunnel under the Yellow River, China's second-longest river. The central route delivers approximately 9.5 billion cubic meters annually to Henan, Hebei, Beijing, and Tianjin. The western route remains largely unbuilt and is by far the most challenging. It would divert water from upper Yangtze tributaries in Tibet and Qinghai Province to the Yellow River headwaters, requiring enormous tunnels through mountain ranges at altitudes exceeding 4,000 meters. Engineering challenges are immense, construction costs astronomical, and environmental concerns substantial. Some routes under consideration require tunnels longer than any ever built. The western route remains in planning stages with no firm construction timeline, though Chinese authorities insist it will eventually be necessary. The project has delivered tangible benefits. Beijing's water security has improved dramatically. The city now receives over 1 billion cubic meters annually from the central route, equivalent to roughly 70% of the city's water consumption. Groundwater levels have stabilized and in some areas begun recovering after decades of decline. Northern cities can support economic growth without water constraints that previously limited development. Agriculture benefits from improved irrigation water availability. Environmental and social costs have been substantial. The Danjiangkou Reservoir expansion for the central route displaced 330,000 people, a massive relocation that has been controversial despite government compensation efforts. The diversion reduces water availability in the Yangtze Basin, potentially affecting ecosystems and downstream users. Though the Yangtze's massive flow means the diversion represents only about 1% of average flow, the project enables continued unsustainable water use patterns in the north rather than forcing conservation and efficiency improvements. Water quality remains problematic. The eastern route passes through one of China's most industrialized and polluted regions. Despite extensive treatment, water quality is often marginal and limits the water's uses. The central route has better quality, but still faces pollution from agricultural runoff and inadequate wastewater treatment in areas surrounding the route. Maintaining water quality requires constant monitoring and management. The economics are debated. At $80 billion plus for infrastructure and ongoing operational costs, the project is expensive per cubic meter delivered. Water pricing doesn't fully recover costs, requiring subsidies. Alternative approaches like desalination, water recycling, or demand management through higher prices and efficiency requirements might achieve similar outcomes at lower cost. But China's government sees the transfer as essential infrastructure investment, regardless of narrow cost-benefit calculations. Climate change adds uncertainty. The project assumes future water availability in the south will match historical patterns, but climate models suggest substantial changes. Yangtze flows could decrease with warming, reducing water available for transfer. Northern China might actually receive increased precipitation in some scenarios, reducing transfer needs. These uncertainties complicate long-term planning and raise questions about whether massive infrastructure investments based on historical conditions remain appropriate. The project demonstrates China's capacity for large-scale infrastructure development and willingness to undertake multi-generational projects. Water transfer infrastructure built today will shape Chinese society for a century or more. Whether this approach proves wise depends on future climate conditions, technological developments, and water management practices impossible to fully predict now. By 2026, the eastern and central routes will have operated for over a decade, providing clear evidence of benefits and challenges. The western route remains mostly conceptual, though preliminary surveys and studies continue. The South-North Water Transfer Project stands as one of the most ambitious infrastructure undertakings in human history, fundamentally re-engineering China's water geography on a scale only China could attempt. China is re-engineering water geography with its water transfer megaproject, but at the same time, it is connecting land masses separated by sea, challenging conventional engineering wisdom on all fronts. For decades, China has contemplated an engineering project that would rank among the world's most challenging: a tunnel beneath the Bohai Strait connecting the Shandong Peninsula with the Liaodong Peninsula. This $36 billion project would create the world's longest undersea tunnel at approximately 123 kilometers, dwarfing even the 50.5-kilometer Channel Tunnel connecting Britain and France. The Bohai Strait separates northeastern China's industrial heartland from the prosperous eastern coast. Currently, freight and passengers must detour hundreds of kilometers around the Bohai Sea, adding hours to journey times. A direct crossing would reduce travel from Dalian to Yantai from over 8 hours to just 40 minutes by car, while also enabling high-speed rail connections between northeastern provinces and the rest of China's rail network. The economic benefits of improved connectivity could be enormous for northeastern China, a region that has struggled economically as coastal provinces have surged ahead. The tunnel would likely be a combination rail and vehicle tunnel, with separate tubes for high-speed trains, conventional trains, and highway traffic. Ventilation alone presents massive challenges. Moving sufficient fresh air through such a long tunnel to support thousands of vehicles and trains requires sophisticated engineering and enormous fans. The tunnel would need multiple emergency exits, maintenance access points, and safety systems unprecedented in scale. Geological surveys of the strait have been ongoing for years, using sonar mapping, core sampling, and geophysical studies to understand seabed conditions. The strait's depth varies from 20 to 80 meters, and the seabed geology includes layers of soft sediment, sand, and harder rock. The tunnel would likely be bored through bedrock well below the seabed, requiring deep access shafts and extensive tunnel boring through varying geology. Seismic activity is a concern. While the area isn't as active as some regions, earthquakes do occur, and the tunnel must be designed to withstand significant seismic forces. Construction methods would likely involve tunnel boring machines, enormous mechanical devices that grind through rock, installing concrete tunnel linings as they advance. Given the tunnel's length, multiple TBMs would work simultaneously from both ends and possibly from intermediate access points. Boring undersea tunnels requires managing water pressure and preventing seawater ingress. Any breach could flood sections of the tunnel. Sophisticated grouting and waterproofing systems are essential. The project's cost is staggering, even by Chinese infrastructure standards. Estimates range from $36 billion to over $50 billion, depending on design choices and unforeseen challenges. This makes it more expensive than Beijing's entire metro system or the Three Gorges Dam. Such enormous costs require careful economic justification, and analyses have produced mixed conclusions. Transportation benefits are clear, but whether they justify costs over alternatives like improved ferry services or focusing investment elsewhere remains debated. Political considerations complicate economic analysis. Connecting northeastern China more effectively to coastal prosperity centers serves political goals of reducing regional inequality and maintaining social stability in areas experiencing economic difficulties. The tunnel would demonstrate Chinese engineering capabilities and national ambition, intangible benefits that matter to decision-makers, even if they're difficult to quantify economically. Environmental impacts would be substantial. Construction would disturb the seabed ecosystem over a large area. Noise and vibration from boring could affect marine life. The tunnel's ventilation systems would emit vehicle exhaust from portal exits, concentrating pollution. But compared to some alternatives, such as a bridge that would obstruct shipping and require massive foundation structures, a tunnel's environmental footprint might be relatively contained. The project timeline remains uncertain. Chinese authorities have conducted extensive studies and feasibility analyses for years, but no firm construction start date has been announced. Some reports suggest construction could begin in the late 2000s with completion in the 2030s. But these timelines appear optimistic given the project's complexity. More conservative estimates suggest construction might not begin until the 2030s, with completion by 2040 or later. Comparison to similar projects is instructive. The Channel Tunnel took 7 years to build and cost approximately $15 billion in 1994, equivalent to perhaps $30 billion today. But at 50.5 kilometers, it's less than half the Bohai Tunnel's length. Japan's Seikan Tunnel, connecting Honshu and Hokkaido Islands, is 53.9 kilometers long and took 25 years to complete, opening in 1988. These precedents suggest the Bohai Tunnel would be an enormous undertaking requiring years or decades, enormous resources, and solutions to unprecedented engineering challenges. China has successfully completed numerous impressive infrastructure projects that skeptics initially deemed impossible or impractical. The country's high-speed rail network, massive bridges, and urban metros demonstrate both technical capability and ability to mobilize resources for large-scale construction. If any country can build a 123-kilometer undersea tunnel, it's China. But even for China, this project represents an extreme challenge. By 2026, the project remains in planning and preliminary study phases. Whether it advances to actual construction depends on economic conditions, political priorities, and ultimately, whether Chinese leadership decides the benefits justify the extraordinary costs and challenges. But the mere fact that such a project is seriously studied demonstrates the scale of ambition driving Chinese infrastructure development. We stay close to China to look at a record-breaking dam changing Central Asia. In the mountains of Tajikistan, one of the world's poorest countries is building what will become the tallest dam on Earth. The Rogun Dam, rising 335 meters above the Vaksh River, will surpass China's Jinpinghuai Dam as the world's highest when it's completed. For Tajikistan, this $4 billion project represents far more than just infrastructure. It's about energy independence, economic development, and asserting sovereignty over the country's water resources. Tajikistan is almost entirely mountainous, with over 90% of its territory covered by the Pamir and Alai ranges. These mountains receive substantial snowfall and glacial melt, feeding rivers with enormous hydroelectric potential. The Vaksh River alone could theoretically generate more electricity than Tajikistan currently consumes. Yet the country faces chronic power shortages every winter when river flows decrease and heating demand spikes. Rogun aims to solve this problem by creating a massive reservoir that stores water during summer for winter power generation. The dam's design is an earth and rockfill structure, not concrete like many famous dams, but rather a carefully engineered mountain of rock, gravel, and clay. This design was chosen partly for cost and partly because Tajikistan sits in an active seismic zone. Earth and rockfill dams can withstand earthquakes better than rigid concrete structures, flexing and settling rather than cracking catastrophically. The dam will be 3,700 meters long at its crest, creating a reservoir that stretches 75 kilometers upstream and holds 13.3 cubic kilometers of water. The project's history is troubled and complex. Initial construction began in 1976 during the Soviet era, but collapsed along with the USSR in 1991. Tajikistan gained independence as one of the poorest Soviet successor states and soon descended into civil war. The partially completed dam sat abandoned for years, its tunnels and structures deteriorating. Serious construction didn't resume until 2016, funded by Tajik government bonds purchased largely by citizens through what amounted to mandatory deductions from salaries, a controversial financing approach born of necessity given limited international lending. Construction has progressed steadily since 2016, despite Tajikistan's limited resources and technical capacity. Italian contractor Cellini Impregilo, the same firm building Ethiopia's Renaissance Dam, provides expertise and project management. The core of the dam is being built layer by layer, with millions of cubic meters of rock quarried from nearby mountains, transported to the dam site, spread in thin layers, and compacted by heavy rollers. This process continues 24 hours a day during construction seasons, with the dam slowly rising toward its final height. The powerhouse will contain 6 turbines with combined capacity of 3,600 megawatts more than doubling Tajikistan's current electricity generation. This power will transform the country's energy situation, ending winter blackouts and potentially providing electricity for export to Afghanistan, Pakistan, and Central Asian neighbors. Revenue from power exports could significantly boost Tajikistan's impoverished economy, though whether neighboring countries will purchase Tajik electricity at competitive prices remains uncertain. Geopolitical tensions surround the project. Uzbekistan, Tajikistan's larger and more powerful neighbor, has historically opposed Rogun. Uzbekistan depends heavily on Vaksh River water for irrigating cotton fields in its Fergana Valley. Uzbek officials fear that Tajikistan will use the dam to manipulate water releases, potentially cutting flows during critical irrigation periods. Tajikistan insists the dam will actually improve downstream water management by regulating flows and preventing spring floods, but decades of mistrust between the countries fuel Uzbek skepticism. These tensions nearly escalated to conflict in the early 2000s when Uzbekistan threatened military action if dam construction continued. Relations have improved somewhat under Uzbekistan's current leadership, and Uzbek objections have softened, but the underlying water security concerns remain. Similar dynamics play out across Central Asia, where Soviet-era agreements on water sharing have broken down. And upstream countries like Tajikistan and Kyrgyzstan pursue hydropower development, while downstream Uzbekistan and Kazakhstan worry about irrigation water. Environmental concerns center on the reservoir's impacts. The valley to be flooded contains villages, agricultural land, and infrastructure. Thousands of residents have been relocated, often to marginal land with inadequate compensation. The reservoir will also submerge habitat for several species, though the relatively barren mountain environment limits biodiversity impacts compared to tropical dam projects. Downstream ecosystems will experience altered flow patterns, though Tajik authorities argue that regulated flows will be more stable than natural, highly variable flows. Seismic risk is substantial. Tajikistan experiences regular earthquakes, and the dam site sits near active fault lines. A major earthquake could potentially damage the dam, and while earth and rockfill dams are seismically resilient, catastrophic failure could send a wall of water down the Vaksh Valley with devastating consequences for downstream populations in both Tajikistan and Uzbekistan. Engineers insist the dam's design accounts for expected seismic forces, but independent verification is limited given Tajikistan's restricted access to technical information. Despite challenges, construction continues advancing. By 2024, the dam had reached approximately 75% of its final height. The first turbine installation is underway, and completion of the entire project is targeted for 2028. Delays are possible given Tajikistan's limited resources and technical capacity, but progress has been more consistent than skeptics predicted. The project benefits from strong political will. President Emomali Rahmon has made Rogun a personal priority and symbol of Tajik nationalism. For Tajikistan, Rogun represents hope for energy security, economic development, and national pride. Whether it delivers on these promises depends on technical execution, regional politics, and economic factors beyond Tajikistan's control. But regardless of ultimate outcomes, the sight of the world's tallest dam rising in one of Central Asia's poorest countries stands as a remarkable achievement. From Central Asia, we now move to Africa, where the continent's most ambitious dam is almost complete.
Now, after 14 years of construction, Ethiopia has officially inaugurated a controversial mega dam built over the River Nile.
Few megaprojects carry the geopolitical weight of the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam. This $5 billion hydroelectric facility on the Blue Nile has been under construction since 2011 and represents Ethiopia's determination to achieve energy independence while asserting control over the Nile's waters, a move that has brought it into sharp conflict with downstream neighbors Egypt and Sudan. When fully operational, the dam will be Africa's largest hydroelectric power plant with an installed capacity of 6,450 megawatts, more than doubling Ethiopia's current electricity generation. The dam will also create a massive reservoir covering 1,874 square kilometers, capable of holding 74 billion cubic meters of water. This reservoir is larger than the entire country of London and will take several years to fill completely. Located near the Sudanese border in Ethiopia's Benishangul Gumuz region, the dam is an enormous structure, 1,780 meters long and 145 meters high. The main dam is a roller-compacted concrete gravity dam, a construction technique that allows for rapid building using concrete spread and compacted by heavy rollers like road pavement. This method enabled Ethiopia to build the dam relatively quickly and economically compared to conventional concrete placement. The project is almost entirely financed and built by Ethiopia without significant foreign involvement, a point of national pride. Italian contractor Cellini Impregilo is overseeing construction, but funding comes primarily from Ethiopian government bonds purchased by citizens, along with state budget allocations. This domestic financing approach was necessary because international lenders were wary of the project's political complications. Those complications are significant. Egypt views the Nile as existential. Over 95% of its water comes from the river, and any reduction threatens the country's agriculture, industry, and drinking water supply. Egypt has historically opposed upstream Nile projects, relying on colonial-era treaties giving it veto power over developments. Ethiopia rejects these treaties as illegitimate and asserts its right to develop its water resources. The filling of the reservoir has been the flashpoint. Ethiopia began filling in 2020, and tensions escalated as Egypt and Sudan demanded binding agreements ensuring minimum water flows downstream. Negotiations mediated by the African Union, the United States, and others have produced limited progress. Ethiopia has proceeded with filling during rainy seasons, while insisting it's prioritizing downstream concerns. But Egypt remains skeptical and has hinted at potential military action if its water security is threatened. Beyond geopolitics, the dam's engineering is impressive. The two power stations will contain 16 turbines, each capable of generating over 400 megawatts. The turbines are designed to operate efficiently across varying water levels as the reservoir fills and seasonal flows change. The facility includes a spillway capable of releasing 12,200 cubic meters per second, critical for managing extreme flooding events and ensuring downstream safety. Environmental and social impacts are substantial. An estimated 20,000 people were relocated from the reservoir area, with compensation and resettlement processes that critics say were inadequate. The dam will alter the Blue Nile's flow patterns, potentially affecting ecosystems and agriculture downstream. Silt that previously flowed down the Nile, enriching farmlands in Sudan and Egypt, will now settle in the reservoir, potentially reducing the dam's lifespan and depriving downstream areas of natural fertilization. Yet the dam's benefits for Ethiopia are transformative. The country's electricity access rate is around 50%, one of the lowest in Africa, and power shortages constrain economic development. The dam will enable Ethiopia to electrify its economy, power industrial development, and export electricity to neighbors including Kenya, Djibouti, and potentially Sudan and Egypt themselves, a commercial relationship Ethiopia hopes will ease political tensions. Construction progress has been steady despite financing constraints and political pressures. By 2024, the dam's structure was essentially complete, with all major concrete work finished. Turbine installation has progressed with several units already operational and generating power. The full project is expected to be complete by 2026, though ongoing disputes may affect the filling schedule and thus when the dam reaches full generating capacity. The project highlights the complex challenges of transboundary water resources in an era of climate change and growing populations. The Nile Basin countries, 11 nations in total, are increasingly asserting rights to develop their water resources, challenging the downstream favoring status quo. The Renaissance Dam is the most dramatic example, but similar tensions exist on the Mekong, Indus, Colorado, and other major river systems. Whether the Renaissance Dam ultimately proves a model for equitable water resource development or a cautionary tale about insufficient cooperation remains uncertain. What's clear is that the dam represents a fundamental shift in African development. Ethiopia is asserting itself as a regional power with agency over its resources, regardless of historical arrangements or downstream concerns. The dam is more than infrastructure, it's a declaration of sovereignty. From controlling water to harnessing wind, we move to the North Sea, where the world's largest wind farm is taking shape. Stretching across 1,000 square kilometers of the North Sea off England's northeast coast, Dogger Bank is set to become the world's largest offshore wind farm. With a combined capacity of 3,600 megawatts across 3 phases, the project will generate enough electricity to power 6 million UK homes, about 5% of Britain's total electricity demand. Located 130 kilometers off the Yorkshire coast, the sheer scale of Dogger Bank is staggering. The wind farm will consist of 277 turbines, each standing up to 260 meters tall from sea level to blade tip, taller than London's Shard, Western Europe's tallest building. The turbines will use 13 megawatt generators from GE Renewable Energy, among the most powerful ever deployed. Each turbine's blades span 220 meters, longer than 2 football fields, sweeping an area large enough to contain London's Trafalgar Square. Dogger Bank occupies one of the North Sea's shallowest areas, mostly 20 to 30 meters deep, over a submerged landmass that connected Britain to continental Europe during the Ice Age. This relatively shallow depth makes construction more feasible than deeper offshore locations, though the distance from shore creates logistical challenges. The project is divided into 3 phases, each with 1,200 megawatts capacity. Total investment exceeds $11.5 billion, making it one of the UK's largest infrastructure investments. Construction began in 2020 with extensive offshore surveys mapping the seabed, identifying archaeological sites, and assessing marine life. The North Sea is one of the world's busiest shipping lanes and most productive fishing grounds, requiring careful coordination to avoid conflicts. The project has also faced scrutiny from environmental groups concerned about impacts on seabirds and marine mammals, though developers emphasize that offshore wind is far less harmful than fossil fuel alternatives. Foundation installation started in 2022. Each turbine sits on a monopile foundation. These monopiles are among the largest ever made, weighing up to 2,000 tons each and requiring specialized installation vessels to position and hammer them into place. The harsh North Sea environment, with its powerful currents and limited weather windows, makes installation challenging and expensive. Cable installation is another massive undertaking. The wind farm requires over 1,000 kilometers of subsea cables to connect the turbines to each other and to shore. These cables are buried beneath the seabed to protect them from fishing vessels and anchor damage. 2 offshore substations collect power from the turbines. From there, separate export cables run 130 kilometers to landfall points on the Yorkshire coast. Onshore, the project includes new substations and grid connections to integrate the massive power influx into Britain's electricity network. The UK's grid was designed when power generation was centralized in a few large plants. Integrating thousands of megawatts of variable renewable power requires significant upgrades, including new transmission lines, smart grid technology, and energy storage. The first turbines in Phase A began generating power in late 2023. Phases B and C are following similar timelines, with completion expected in 2026. The economic benefits extend beyond clean power. Construction has created thousands of jobs, both offshore during installation and onshore in ports like Teesside, where components are staged and vessels mobilized. Meanwhile, operational maintenance will provide long-term employment. The North Sea is becoming a hub for offshore wind development. Dogger Bank is the largest project, but dozens more are in various development stages across British, Dutch, German, and Danish waters. The industry is transforming the region's energy landscape, replacing declining North Sea oil and gas production with renewable infrastructure. This transition is creating new industries and employment while helping Europe reduce dependence on imported fossil fuels. Dogger Bank represents the maturation of offshore wind technology. Early offshore wind farms were small, close to shore, and expensive. Today's projects are massive, located in deeper and more challenging waters, and achieving costs competitive with fossil fuels. If Dogger Bank succeeds technically and economically, it will validate the offshore wind model and likely accelerate deployment across global markets from the United States to Asia. We will now go from engineering wonders reshaping construction to evolutions in science that will expand humanity's horizons. High in Chile's Atacama Desert, at an altitude of 3,046 meters on Cerro Armazones, humanity is building the most powerful ground-based telescope ever conceived. The Extremely Large Telescope, or ELT, will have a primary mirror 39 meters in diameter, making it the largest optical telescope in the world when it achieves first light in 2028. To understand the scale, the ELT's primary mirror is so large that it cannot be built as a single piece of glass. Instead, it consists of 798 hexagonal mirror segments, each 1.4 meters wide and just 50 millimeters thick, working together as one enormous reflecting surface. These segments must be positioned with nanometer precision, less than 1,000th the width of a human hair, and constantly adjusted to maintain perfect alignment as the telescope moves and temperature changes. The project is being built by the European Southern Observatory, an intergovernmental organization supported by 16 European countries plus Chile. The total budget is 1.3 billion euros, approximately $1.4 billion, making it one of the most expensive scientific instruments ever constructed. Construction began in 2014 with the leveling of Cerro Armazones, which required removing 5,000 truckloads of rock to create a flat platform for the telescope. The Atacama Desert was chosen for very specific reasons. It's one of the driest places on Earth, with virtually no rainfall and exceptionally clear skies, perfect conditions for astronomical observation. The high altitude means the telescope sits above much of Earth's atmosphere, reducing atmospheric distortion that blurs images. On this mountaintop, astronomers will have over 300 clear nights per year, far more than most observatories. The telescope's dome is itself an engineering marvel, a massive rotating structure 85 meters in diameter and 80 meters tall, weighing approximately 6,100 tons. Despite its enormous mass, the dome will rotate smoothly on a track just 11 millimeters wide, allowing precise positioning to point the telescope at any part of the sky. The dome's design includes vents and cooling systems to manage internal temperatures, preventing heat from distorting observations. But the ELT's real power comes from its adaptive optics system, technology that compensates for atmospheric turbulence in real time. Earth's atmosphere constantly shifts and shimmers, which is why stars appear to twinkle. For astronomers, this twinkling is a nightmare that blurs images. The ELT uses deformable mirrors that change shape thousands of times per second, guided by computers analyzing reference stars to cancel out atmospheric distortion. This technology will give the ELT images almost as sharp as space telescopes like Hubble, but with far greater light-collecting power. What will the ELT study? Its scientific goals are ambitious. The telescope will directly image exoplanets, planets orbiting other stars, and analyze their atmospheres for signs of water, oxygen, and potentially even biological activity. It will peer back to the universe's first galaxies, formed just hundreds of millions of years after the Big Bang, helping answer fundamental questions about cosmic history. It will study black holes, dark matter, and dark energy, the mysterious components that make up 95% of the universe but remain poorly understood. Construction progress has been steady despite the challenging location. Building at 3,000 meters altitude in a remote desert presents logistical nightmares. Workers face thin air, extreme temperature swings from scorching days to freezing nights, and isolation from major cities. All construction materials and equipment must be trucked up a winding mountain road. A temporary village houses workers with its own power generation, water supply, and medical facilities. By 2024, the telescope's massive concrete pier, the structure supporting the entire instrument, was completed. This pier alone contains 3,500 cubic meters of concrete and 670 tons of steel reinforcement. The telescope mount, which allows the entire instrument to move smoothly despite weighing over 2,800 tons, is being assembled. The enormous dome structure is under construction, with its distinctive design already visible from the valley below. The primary mirror segments are being manufactured by German company Schott, a process requiring extraordinary precision. Each segment must be ground and polished to within 10 nanometers of the perfect shape, smooth enough that if scaled up to the size of a continent, the largest imperfection would be just centimeters high. These mirrors are then coated with aluminum to maximize reflectivity. One of the ELT's most exciting capabilities will be spectroscopy, splitting light into its component wavelengths to reveal the chemical composition, temperature, and motion of astronomical objects. The telescope will carry several spectrographs, instruments that analyze light in unprecedented detail. These will allow astronomers to study the atmospheres of potentially habitable exoplanets, searching for chemical signatures that might indicate life. The telescope will also contribute to cosmology, the study of the universe's structure and evolution. By observing extremely distant galaxies, astronomers can look back in time. The light from these galaxies has traveled billions of years to reach us, showing the universe as it was in the distant past. The ELT will observe galaxies so far away that we see them as they appeared when the universe was less than 10% of its current age, helping us understand how galaxies formed and evolved. Chile already hosts several world-class observatories, and the ELT will strengthen the country's position as a global astronomy hub. The agreement with Chile includes technology transfer, training for Chilean astronomers and engineers, and guaranteed observation time for Chilean researchers. This partnership model has proven successful with existing facilities and is helping build scientific capacity in Latin America. Competition in giant telescope construction is fierce. The United States is building the Giant Magellan Telescope, also in Chile, with 7 8.4-meter mirrors combining to equal a 25-meter aperture. The 30-meter telescope, an international project, has faced delays due to protests in Hawaii over its proposed location on Mauna Kea, a mountain sacred to native Hawaiians. The ELT, with its 39-meter aperture, will be the largest of these next-generation observatories. First light, when the telescope makes its first observations, is scheduled for 2028, though the full suite of instruments may take additional years to install and commission. When operational, the ELT will represent a quantum leap in our ability to study the universe, likely leading to discoveries we cannot yet anticipate. It stands as a testament to international scientific cooperation and humanity's enduring drive to understand our place in the cosmos. From exploring the heavens, we now turn to a different kind of ambition, the most advanced military aircraft ever developed. In a facility in southern France, 35 nations are collaborating on what might be the most complex machine ever built. Is a massive experiment designed to prove that nuclear fusion can generate clean, virtually limitless energy. With a total cost now estimated at over $25 billion and decades of work ahead, ITER represents humanity's most serious attempt yet to harness the power of stars. Nuclear fusion is the process that powers the sun. Unlike nuclear fission, which splits atoms and produces long-lived radioactive waste, fusion produces minimal waste and uses fuel that's abundant on Earth. The primary fuels, deuterium and tritium, can be extracted from seawater and lithium. The amount of fusion fuel in a bathtub could power a city for a year. The challenge is that fusion requires temperatures exceeding 150 million degrees Celsius, 10 times hotter than the sun's core. At these temperatures, matter exists as plasma, a superheated gas where electrons are stripped from atoms. No material can contain such plasma directly, so ITER uses magnetic fields to suspend it in a vacuum chamber, keeping the plasma away from the walls. ITER is a donut-shaped chamber surrounded by enormous superconducting magnets. These magnets create fields strong enough to contain and compress the plasma. The main chamber is massive 10 meters in diameter, with a plasma volume of 840 cubic meters, far larger than any previous fusion experiment. The entire device stands 30 meters tall and weighs 23,000 tons, roughly 3 times the weight of the Eiffel Tower. Construction began in 2010 on a secluded site in Cadarache, southern France. Each member provides specific components built to exact specifications. This distributed manufacturing approach spreads costs and expertise, but creates logistical and quality control challenges. The magnets alone are engineering marvels. Made from niobium tin superconducting cable cooled to minus 269 degrees Celsius using liquid helium. At these temperatures, the cables carry massive electrical currents without resistance, generating magnetic fields of about 200,000 times Earth's magnetic field. These magnets must be manufactured with extreme precision and then transported thousands of kilometers without damage. Progress has been slower and more expensive than originally hoped. The project was supposed to achieve first plasma when the tokamak first successfully contains and heats plasma in 2016, with fusion reactions beginning around 2020. As of 2024, construction is about 80% complete, with first plasma now scheduled for 2025 and the first deuterium-tritium fusion experiments planned for the 2030s. The sheer complexity of coordinating 35 nations, each with different standards, regulations, and manufacturing capabilities, has proven challenging. Components manufactured in one country must interface perfectly with parts made elsewhere, a tolerance nightmare when dealing with pieces weighing hundreds of tons that must fit together with millimeter precision. Quality issues have forced some components to be rebuilt. The tokamak building, a 7-story concrete structure designed to shield the surrounding area from radiation, is complete. The massive cryostat, the vacuum chamber that houses the tokamak, has been installed. This chamber, 30 meters in diameter and 30 meters tall, is the largest stainless steel vacuum vessel ever built. Magnet installation is underway, a delicate process requiring enormous cranes and precise positioning. ITER won't generate electricity. It's an experiment designed to prove fusion can work at utility scale. The goal is to produce 500 megawatts of fusion power from just 50 megawatts of input power, a tenfold energy gain that would demonstrate fusion's viability. If successful, ITER would pave the way for a demonstration fusion power plant that would actually feed electricity into the grid, followed eventually by commercial fusion plants. Beyond commercial uses, environmental benefits, if fusion succeeds, would be a game changer. Fusion produces no greenhouse gases and minimal radioactive waste compared to fission reactors. Some structural materials become radioactive from neutron exposure, but this induced radioactivity decays relatively quickly, within a century, rather than the millennia required for fission waste. Fusion plants would be inherently safe. Any malfunction would cause the plasma to cool and shut down, with no possibility of meltdown or runaway reactions. Despite the unprecedented gains, economic viability of ITER remains uncertain. Even if fusion works, commercial fusion plants will face competition from renewable energy sources that are rapidly becoming cheaper. Fusion plants will be complex, expensive to build, and require highly skilled operators. Whether fusion can produce electricity cheaply enough to compete remains an open question that won't be answered for decades. Nevertheless, ITER represents an extraordinary scientific and engineering achievement. 35 nations are cooperating on a peaceful scientific project despite political tensions and conflicts. The technical challenges being overcome will advance science and engineering across multiple fields. And if fusion ultimately succeeds as a commercial energy source, it could provide abundant, clean power for thousands of years, fundamentally transforming human civilization. From mega developments in science, we now examine the evolution of global connectivity with some of the biggest airport megaprojects under construction. Vietnam's economy has been growing rapidly for decades, transforming the country into a manufacturing powerhouse and tourist destination. But Ho Chi Minh City's Tan Son Nhat Airport, the country's busiest, is severely overcrowded, operating at nearly double its design capacity. The solution is Long Thanh International Airport, a $16 billion megaproject that will become one of Southeast Asia's largest aviation hubs when it opens in 2026. Located 40 kilometers northeast of Ho Chi Minh City in Dong Nai Province, Long Thanh will be built in 3 phases. Phase 1, currently under construction, includes a single terminal, 2 runways, and related infrastructure capable of handling 25 million passengers annually, about half of Tan Son Nhat's current traffic. By the time all 3 phases are complete, projected for 2040, Long Thanh will have 4 terminals, 4 runways, and capacity for 100 million passengers per year, making it comparable to major Asian hubs like Singapore, Bangkok, and Hong Kong. The project site covers 5,000 hectares, about 50 square kilometers in area, larger than Manhattan. Creating this site required extensive land clearance and the relocation of nearly 5,000 households, a massive social undertaking that delayed the project for years. Compensation disputes, inadequate resettlement housing, and protests from affected communities created political headaches for the Vietnamese government. These social issues were eventually resolved through additional compensation and improved resettlement arrangements, allowing construction to begin in earnest in 2021. The airport's terminal design emphasizes efficiency and Vietnamese cultural identity. The main passenger terminal will span 373,000 square meters with a distinctive roof design inspired by Vietnamese lotus flowers and traditional hats. The structure will feature extensive natural lighting to reduce energy consumption and showcase bamboo and wood elements celebrating Vietnam's architectural heritage. 76 aircraft gates will serve both domestic and international flights, with state-of-the-art passenger processing systems designed to minimize wait times. Runway construction has been a massive undertaking. The 2 Phase 1 runways each measure 4,000 meters long and 60 meters wide, capable of handling the largest aircraft including Airbus A380s and Boeing 747-8s. The underlying ground conditions required extensive soil stabilization. The site's clay soils would compress under the weight of runways and taxiways, causing dangerous settling. Engineers are using deep soil mixing, stone columns, and other ground improvement techniques to create stable foundations. Over 100 million cubic meters of earth have been moved to create the runway platforms and grading required for proper drainage. The airport's location was chosen carefully. Long Thanh sits in an area with relatively few obstacles, allowing for optimal runway configurations and flight paths. The site is also positioned to serve multiple provinces in southern Vietnam, not just Ho Chi Minh City. High-speed road and rail links are planned to connect the airport to the region's major cities, creating a multimodal transportation hub that will enhance connectivity across southern Vietnam. Vietnamese construction firms are handling most of the work, supported by international consultants providing expertise in airport design and construction. Japan's airport authority has been particularly involved, sharing knowledge from developing Tokyo's Narita and Haneda airports. South Korean firms are contributing expertise in terminal design and systems integration. This international cooperation is helping Vietnam build world-class infrastructure while developing its domestic construction capabilities. The project's economic rationale is compelling. Vietnam has become a major tourist destination, with visitor arrivals growing rapidly before the pandemic and recovering strongly afterward. The country is also a key link in global manufacturing supply chains, particularly for electronics, textiles, and footwear. Adequate aviation infrastructure is essential for sustaining this economic growth. Long Thanh will relieve pressure on Tan Son Nhat while providing capacity for decades of future growth. Cargo operations will be a significant component. A dedicated cargo terminal and supporting infrastructure will handle 1.2 million tons of freight annually in Phase 1, expanding to 5 million tons when fully developed. This cargo capacity is critical for Vietnam's export-oriented economy. Time-sensitive electronics and garments need reliable air freight connections to global markets, and Long Thanh will provide the capacity and efficiency these industries require. Sustainability features are integrated throughout the design. Solar panels on terminal roofs will generate a portion of the airport's electricity needs. Rainwater collection systems will provide water for landscaping and fire suppression. The airport will catalyze broader regional development. The surrounding area is being planned as an aviation-focused economic zone with logistics facilities, light manufacturing, and commercial development. These secondary developments will create tens of thousands of jobs and generate substantial economic activity. Local governments see Long Thanh as an opportunity to attract investment and transform Dong Nai province into a major economic center. Construction progress has been steady since 2021. By 2024, site preparation was largely complete, runway foundations were being laid, and terminal construction was well underway. The project remains on schedule for Phase 1 opening in late 2026, though some industry observers predict potential delays given the complexity of airport construction and the need for extensive testing before operations can begin. Financing has required creative approaches. The Vietnamese government is providing most funding, but the scale has strained public finances. Officials have explored public-private partnerships for certain components and are considering allowing private investment in commercial developments at the airport. International lending institutions, including the Asian Development Bank, are providing loans, seeing Long Thanh as a strategic infrastructure investment in a rapidly developing economy. Once operational, Long Thanh will transform Vietnam's aviation landscape. Airlines will have the capacity and facilities needed to expand services, potentially making Vietnam a hub for transit traffic within Southeast Asia. The country's tourism industry will benefit from improved connectivity and the ability to handle more visitors. Manufacturing supply chains will become more efficient with better cargo facilities, and Ho Chi Minh City will gain the world-class gateway it needs to compete with other major Asian cities. From Southeast Asia's aviation ambitions, we move to the Middle East, where Kuwait is dramatically expanding its existing airport. Kuwait International Airport, serving the small but wealthy Gulf nation, is undergoing one of the Middle East's most significant aviation infrastructure upgrades. The $4.8 billion Terminal 2 expansion will transform the aging airport into a modern regional hub capable of handling 25 million passengers annually, more than doubling current capacity and positioning Kuwait as a competitor to nearby Gulf aviation giants. Kuwait's location makes it a natural aviation crossroads. Situated in the northern Gulf, the country sits between major markets in the Arabian Peninsula, Iran, South Asia, and East Africa. Kuwait Airways and low-cost carrier Jazeera Airways have been growing rapidly, but the existing airport, built decades ago, lacks the capacity and amenities of modern airports in Dubai, Doha, and Abu Dhabi. Terminal 2 aims to close this gap and restore Kuwait's position as an important Gulf aviation center. The new terminal is nearly 3 times the size of the existing terminals combined. The design features a dramatic curved roof structure inspired by traditional Kuwait architecture, but executed with modern materials and engineering. The roof's sweeping curves create a distinctive silhouette while providing shade and thermal insulation crucial for Kuwait's extreme climate, where summer temperatures regularly exceed 50 degrees Celsius. Inside, the terminal emphasizes passenger experience and operational efficiency. 62 contact gates where aircraft park directly at the terminal will eliminate many of the bus rides that currently shuttle passengers to distant aircraft. Immigration and security checkpoints are designed for high throughput with minimal waiting. The baggage handling system will be among the most advanced in the region, using automation and tracking technology to reduce mishandled luggage and speed delivery. Sustainability is a major design consideration, despite Kuwait's desertic climate and petroleum-based economy. A massive solar panel installation on the roof will generate significant electricity, reducing grid demand. Advanced HVAC systems will minimize cooling energy consumption, critical in a climate where air conditioning accounts for the majority of energy use. Water-efficient fixtures and wastewater recycling will reduce consumption in a country where water scarcity is a growing concern. Construction began in 2016 but has faced significant delays. Originally scheduled to open in 2022, the terminal completion has been pushed back multiple times due to contractor disputes, design changes, and quality control issues. These delays have frustrated Kuwaiti officials and business leaders eager to see improved aviation infrastructure. However, by 2024, construction progress accelerated significantly, with most major structural work complete and systems installation well underway. The terminal's structural system is impressive. The roof is supported by enormous steel arches spanning up to 75 meters without intermediate columns, creating vast column-free spaces inside. These arches had to be fabricated off-site, transported to Kuwait, and lifted into place by massive cranes, a complex operation requiring meticulous planning and execution. The roof itself uses advanced materials that provide strength while minimizing weight, crucial for creating the dramatic curves without requiring excessive structural support. Airside, the airport is adding substantial apron space for aircraft parking, along with new taxiways to improve traffic flow. The existing runway is being upgraded to handle larger aircraft and increase traffic. While Terminal 2 is the centerpiece, the project includes significant improvements to supporting infrastructure, including fire and rescue facilities, air traffic control systems, and ground service equipment. Cultural expression is woven throughout the terminal. Art installations by Kuwaiti and international artists will showcase Kuwait's history and culture. Traditional architectural elements appear in modern interpretations, connecting the ultra-modern terminal to Kuwait's heritage. Signage and wayfinding use Arabic and English, reflecting the country's bilingual character. These elements aim to give the terminal a distinct Kuwaiti identity, rather than feeling like generic international airport space. Kuwait's aviation strategy centers on developing a niche as a regional hub rather than competing directly with mega hubs like Dubai or Doha. The country's population is small, just 4.5 million, so domestic traffic is minimal, as well as serving Kuwait's substantial expatriate population traveling to and from South Asia, the Philippines, and other labor-source countries. The economics depend on Kuwait Airways successfully growing its network and attracting transfer passengers, while Jazeera Airways expands its low-cost services. The airport expansion provides the infrastructure needed for this growth, but success is not guaranteed. Competition from established Gulf hubs is fierce, and Kuwait Airways has struggled with operational efficiency and profitability in recent years. The new terminal provides an opportunity for a fresh start, but execution will be critical. The project represents broader trends in Gulf development. Kuwait has historically lagged its neighbors in infrastructure investment despite comparable wealth. Political gridlock and bureaucratic inefficiencies have delayed projects that move forward rapidly in Dubai or Qatar. Terminal 2's delays exemplify these challenges, despite political obstacles. Upon opening in 2026, Terminal 2 will mark a new chapter for Kuwait's aviation sector. Airlines will have modern facilities needed to grow and compete. Passengers will experience vastly improved comfort and efficiency compared to the cramped, aging existing terminals. And Kuwait will have the foundation for developing itself as a regional aviation player, diversifying its economy beyond oil and gas. The question remains whether infrastructure alone is sufficient. Kuwait will need complementary policies including aviation liberalization, efficient airline operations, and effective marketing to attract transit passengers. The terminal provides the hardware. Success depends on getting the software right. But with the new terminal, Kuwait will at least have the platform needed to compete in the Gulf's crowded aviation market. From Kuwait's aviation hub, we travel to Dubai, where an even more ambitious airport expansion is taking shape. While Dubai International is famous as the world's busiest airport by international passengers, its future is not at its current location, but at Al Maktoum International Airport, also known as Dubai World Central. This $35 billion mega-project, when complete, will be the world's largest airport with capacity for 260 million passengers annually, 5 runways, and cargo facilities dwarfing any current airport on Earth. Located in Dubai South, about 37 kilometers from downtown Dubai, Al Maktoum opened its cargo operations in 2010 and began handling passengers in 2013. But the current facility is just a small fraction of the ultimate vision. The master plan calls for an airport spanning 56 square kilometers, roughly the size of the entire city of Cleveland, Ohio. This massive development will include 5 passenger terminals, a freight terminal complex handling 12 million tons of cargo annually, and supporting infrastructure on a scale never before attempted. The airport's name honors Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum, Dubai's ruler and the visionary behind the Emirates' transformation into a global hub. The airport is central to Dubai's strategy of maintaining its position as a connecting point between East and West. As aircraft technology evolves and ultra-long-haul flights become more common, traditional hub-and-spoke models face challenges. Dubai's response is to build such overwhelming capacity that the airport can serve virtually any routing combination while offering airlines operational flexibility and efficiency that smaller hubs cannot match. Phase 1 of the expansion, currently under construction, will increase passenger capacity to 40 million annually with the addition of substantial new terminal space. This phase includes a massive terminal building, the passenger terminal building designed to eventually expand into a connected series of terminals. The architecture emphasizes efficiency with relatively short walking distances, considering the scale, extensive use of automated people movers, and design flexibility, allowing the terminal to grow as needed. The 5 runways will be arranged in an unusual configuration, optimized for capacity and efficiency. Rather than traditional parallel runways, Al Maktoum will use a combination of parallel and converging arrangements that allow for simultaneous operations with minimal wake turbulence conflicts. This configuration, enabled by the vast available space, will allow the airport to handle takeoffs and landings at rates impossible at more constrained airports. Computer simulations suggest the runway system could handle over 200 aircraft movements per hour, far exceeding current record holder Atlanta's peak capacity. Cargo operations are a crucial component often overlooked in passenger airport discussions. Al Maktoum already handles significant cargo traffic, so the ultimate vision includes dedicated cargo terminals, sorting facilities, and direct connections to surrounding free zones where goods can be stored, processed, and redistributed without entering Dubai's customs territory. This efficiency makes Dubai attractive for companies managing global supply chains. The airport sits at the center of Dubai South, a 145 square kilometer development that includes logistics facilities, residential communities, commercial zones, and light industrial areas. This integrated approach aims to create a complete economic ecosystem around the airport. Workers can live in adjacent communities, reducing commuting times and costs. Construction timelines have been repeatedly adjusted, reflecting Dubai's pragmatic approach to development. Original plans called for rapid expansion, but the 2008 global financial crisis forced reconsideration. Plans were scaled back and timelines extended as Dubai dealt with economic challenges. More recently, the decision to host Expo 2020 accelerated development of supporting infrastructure. The current construction push aims to have Phase 1 complete by 2030, with subsequent phases depending on demand growth and economic conditions. Environmental considerations are receiving increased attention. Operating 5 runways serving hundreds of millions of passengers will inevitably create noise and emissions. The airport's remote location minimizes noise impacts on residential areas, though surrounding development will eventually bring communities closer. The airport is incorporating renewable energy where practical, including extensive solar installations, though the scale of operations means fossil fuel consumption will remain substantial. Transportation connections will be critical to the success of an airport built at such a massive scale. A metro extension is planned to link Al Maktoum with Dubai's existing metro network, allowing passengers to reach downtown in about 45 minutes. Highway expansions will improve road access for cargo trucks and passengers choosing to drive. The surrounding development includes dedicated freight rail connections, enabling cargo to move efficiently beyond Dubai. Aviation and related logistics already employ hundreds of thousands in Dubai. The airport will enable Dubai's continued growth as a tourism destination and business hub, ensuring the emirate has sufficient infrastructure for decades to come. Airports in Doha, Abu Dhabi, Istanbul, and Saudi Arabia are all expanding, competing for the same transit traffic. Each claims to be the best-positioned hub for connecting passengers between regions. Al Maktoum's scale is its advantage. No competing airport comes close to the planned capacity. Whether this capacity advantage translates to airline and passenger preference remains to be seen. The project also reflects Dubai's long-term thinking and willingness to make massive infrastructure investments decades before they're fully needed. Critics question whether 260 million passenger capacity is realistic or necessary, but Dubai's history includes multiple instances of building infrastructure that seemed excessive but eventually filled. The Palm Jumeirah, Burj Khalifa, and Dubai International itself were all questioned when announced, but are now recognized as strategic successes. Dubai International Airport will eventually close once Al Maktoum is fully operational, freeing up valuable land in central Dubai for redevelopment. This property, located near the city's core, could be transformed into residential and commercial space worth tens of billions of dollars. The airport's relocation thus serves multiple purposes, providing aviation infrastructure for the next century, while simultaneously unlocking prime real estate for development. By 2026, Phase 1 construction is advancing significantly with major structural work progressing and the runway configuration taking shape. Whether Al Maktoum ultimately achieves its full vision or becomes a monument to overreach will be determined by decades of future development. But for now, it stands as the world's most ambitious airport project. From Middle Eastern aviation megaprojects, we head to Australia, where Sydney is building a massive second airport. Sydney, Australia's largest city, has needed a second major airport for decades. Kingsford Smith Airport, located close to the city centre, has been operating near capacity for years with limited room for expansion. Western Sydney Airport, also known as Nancy Bird Walton Airport, is the $5.3 billion solution, a new international airport, under construction 50 kilometers west of Sydney's downtown, that will transform the region's connectivity when it opens in 2026. The airport is named after Nancy Bird Walton, a pioneering Australian aviator and the country's first female commercial pilot. The site covers 1,780 hectares in Badgerys Creek, a rapidly developing area in Sydney's western suburbs. The location was chosen after decades of study and debate, with multiple potential sites evaluated for environmental impact, airspace conflicts, and economic development potential. Badgerys Creek emerged as the optimal choice, offering sufficient space, favorable geography, and positioning to serve Sydney's growing western suburbs. The initial phase will include a single terminal, one runway, and supporting infrastructure capable of handling 10 million passengers annually. This may seem modest compared to some mega projects, but it's just the beginning. The master plan calls for eventual expansion to 2 runways, multiple terminals, and capacity for 82 million passengers, making it comparable to the world's major airports. The site was deliberately chosen large enough to accommodate this growth over coming decades. The terminal building, designed by Australian architecture firms alongside international consultants, emphasizes natural light, sustainability, and operational efficiency. The structure will use extensive glazing to minimize artificial lighting needs, while sun shading and orientation reduce cooling loads. Timber from sustainably managed Australian forests features prominently in the interior, creating a distinctly Australian aesthetic while supporting local forestry industries. The main runway will measure 3,700 meters long, sufficient for the largest commercial aircraft, including Airbus A380s and Boeing 777s on long-haul routes. The runway's orientation was carefully chosen to minimize noise impacts on surrounding communities while providing efficient flight paths to and from Sydney. Sophisticated noise modeling guided the design of approach and departure procedures aimed at keeping aircraft over less populated areas during critical low-altitude flight phases. Construction began in 2018 with extensive site preparation. The area's underlying geology includes shale and sandstone formations requiring different approaches for foundation construction. Over 1.8 million cubic meters of earth was moved to create the runway platform, terminal site, and associated infrastructure. This earth-moving operation alone took nearly 2 years and required careful environmental management to control erosion and sediment runoff into nearby waterways. Access infrastructure is a major component of the project. A new motorway, the M12, connects the airport to Sydney's existing motorway network, providing road access for passengers and freight. A railway line is planned but won't be completed for several years after the airport opens, a source of criticism from public transport advocates who argue it should open simultaneously. In the interim, bus services will connect the airport to nearby railway stations and major population centers. The airport is being built with sustainability as a core principle. It will be carbon neutral from day one of operations, the first Australian airport to achieve this. On-site renewable energy generation, including a large solar farm, will provide much of the airport's electricity needs. Electric ground support vehicles will service aircraft, reducing local emissions. The terminal's design minimizes energy consumption through passive systems, and rainwater collection will reduce reliance on municipal water supplies. One key area where the West Sydney Airport will make a huge difference is upgrading the region's economy. Western Sydney has traditionally been less prosperous than other parts of the metropolitan area, with higher unemployment and fewer high-skilled jobs. The airport is positioned as a catalyst for transformation. An adjacent 10-square-kilometer aerospace precinct is being developed to attract aviation-related businesses, including aircraft maintenance, component manufacturing, and logistics operations. These businesses will create thousands of jobs, many in technical and engineering fields, raising the region's employment quality. Real estate development is already responding to the airport's construction. Residential property prices in western Sydney suburbs near the airport have increased significantly as buyers anticipate improved connectivity and economic growth. Commercial developers are planning office parks, hotels, and retail centers to serve the airport and surrounding businesses. Some criticize this development as creating suburban sprawl, but supporters argue it addresses Sydney's chronic housing affordability crisis by opening new areas for development. The airport will serve both domestic and international flights, with plans for low-cost carriers to use it as an alternative to crowded Kingsford Smith Airport. Qantas has committed to operating there, while other airlines are evaluating whether to split Sydney operations between the two airports or focus on one. The government hopes Western Sydney Airport will attract sufficient airline interest to become a genuine alternative rather than just overflow capacity for Kingsford Smith. Construction has progressed remarkably well with minimal major delays, unusual for infrastructure megaprojects. The project benefits from stable government funding, experienced contractors, and detailed planning that anticipated most challenges. By 2024, the terminal structure was essentially complete, systems installation was underway, and the runway was paved and awaiting final surface treatments and marking. The airport remained on track for commissioning and opening in late 2026. The airport has faced opposition from environmental groups concerned about impacts on local wildlife and increased aviation emissions. The site included habitat for several threatened species, requiring extensive environmental mitigation, including habitat creation in offset areas. Noise impacts on surrounding communities remain contentious, though modeling suggests most areas will experience acceptable noise levels with modern, quieter aircraft and optimized flight procedures. Western Sydney Airport represents a significant investment in Australia's infrastructure and a long-term bet on Sydney's continued growth. The city's population is projected to reach 8 million by 2050, and aviation demand will grow accordingly. By providing substantial new capacity before it's critically needed, the airport will support Sydney's economy while giving airlines and travelers alternatives to Kingsford Smith's congestion. When Western Sydney Airport opens in 2026, it will mark a new era for Sydney aviation. The long journey from proposal to reality will conclude, and the focus will shift to whether the airport achieves its economic and social objectives. Early indications are positive, strong business interest, rising real estate values, and infrastructure investment all suggest Western Sydney is indeed transforming. The airport will be judged ultimately not just on its aviation success, but on whether it helps create economic opportunity and prosperity in a region that has historically been overlooked. Connectivity landscape isn't only changing in the air. Changes at a much larger scope are being observed with the rapidly changing rail infrastructure. London's Crossrail, officially known as the Elizabeth Line, represents one of Europe's most ambitious urban rail projects. This $24 billion undertaking has constructed 118 kilometers of new railway, including 42 kilometers of new tunnels beneath central London, connecting the city's east and west like never before. Though sections opened in 2022, full services only began in 2024, and work continues on final elements through 2026. Crossrail addresses a fundamental problem. London's transportation network is overwhelmed. The city's population has grown to over 9 million, and its economy attracts hundreds of thousands of commuters daily. Existing rail lines and the underground struggle with overcrowding, delays, and insufficient capacity. Crossrail adds 10% to London's rail capacity, with modern trains carrying 1,500 passengers each at frequencies up to 24 trains per hour. The project's engineering challenges have been immense. Boring tunnels beneath one of the world's oldest major cities means navigating around thousands of existing structures: underground lines, sewers, water mains, gas pipes, electrical cables, building foundations, and archaeological sites. London's geology, primarily London clay, is actually favorable for tunneling, But the sheer density of existing infrastructure made every meter of progress complex and carefully planned. 8 tunnel boring machines, each named after famous women, excavated the twin tunnels. These machines are extraordinary devices, 140 meters long, weighing approximately 1,000 tons, cutting through earth at rates of up to 100 meters per week. The machines operated around the clock for years, with crews working in shifts deep underground in hot, cramped, noisy conditions. The tunnels required 40 ventilation and emergency access shafts drilled from the surface, enormous vertical shafts that allow air circulation and provide emergency escape routes. Some shafts reach depths of 40 meters. Each shaft required months to excavate and caused significant disruption at the surface. Local residents complained about noise, traffic impacts, and construction lasting years, but these shafts are essential for safe tunnel operations. Crossrail stations are architectural showcases, high-capacity escalators, extensive accessibility features, and designs by prominent architects. Some stations are vast underground caverns. The stations alone cost billions, representing significant portions of the total budget. The project experienced massive delays and cost overruns. Originally planned to open in 2018 for £14.8 billion, Crossrail finally launched in 2022 at costs approaching £19 billion. Delays stemmed from multiple sources: construction complications, quality issues requiring rework, complex systems integration between old and new infrastructure, and challenges coordinating thousands of contractors and stakeholders. These problems damaged the project's reputation despite its ultimate technical success. Bond Street Station exemplifies the challenges. This station in central London's shopping district proved extraordinarily difficult. The geology was worse than expected, with ground conditions requiring additional stabilization. The station box is huge, longer than the Shard is tall, and sits beneath busy streets. Coordinating construction while maintaining surface traffic and protecting surrounding buildings required meticulous planning and execution. Bond Street opened over a year after the rest of the line, in October 2022. Crossrail's economic benefits are substantial. Studies suggest it will generate £42 billion in economic benefits through improved productivity, reduced congestion, and property value increases. Journey times from East to West London are significantly reduced. Canary Wharf to Heathrow now takes 45 minutes versus over an hour previously. The line enables workers to access job opportunities across the city more easily, potentially reducing inequality by connecting less prosperous eastern areas with wealthy western districts. Critics argue this development is gentrifying working-class neighborhoods and displacing existing residents, but supporters see economic revitalization and increased housing supply. The technology integrated into Crossrail is state-of-the-art, a significant improvement over many older underground lines. Real-time information systems keep passengers informed about services and disruptions. Crossrail demonstrates both the benefits and challenges of major urban rail projects. The line is transforming London's transportation and will benefit the city for generations. But the delays and cost overruns show how difficult it is to execute such complex projects in dense urban environments. Every underground utility, building foundation, and archaeological find creates delays. Every stakeholder, residents, businesses, utilities, governments, has interests that must be accommodated. Managing this complexity is perhaps harder than the pure engineering. By 2026, Crossrail is fully operational with trains running every few minutes throughout the day. Final snagging work continues on some systems, but for practical purposes, the project is complete. It stands as a testament to what can be achieved even in a city where building seems nearly impossible due to existing infrastructure and development. Other cities considering similar projects will study Crossrail's successes and mistakes, learning lessons that will shape urban rail development worldwide. From urban rail to connecting nations, we now move to a regional transportation megaproject connecting Eastern Europe. Rail Baltica is transforming transportation across the Baltic states. This $5.8 billion high-speed railway will connect Tallinn, Estonia, with Riga, Latvia, Kaunas, and Vilnius in Lithuania, and eventually Warsaw, Poland, creating the first modern European gauge rail link between the Baltic states and the rest of the European Union. For countries that regained independence just 3 decades ago, this project represents far more than transportation infrastructure. It's about integration with Europe and reducing dependence on Russia. The Baltic states inherited Soviet-era rail infrastructure built to Russian gauge 1,520 mm incompatible with standard European gauge of 1,435 mm. This means freight and passengers traveling between the Baltics and the EU must change trains at the border, creating delays and costs. Rail Baltica will use standard European gauge, enabling direct connections to Berlin, Paris, and beyond, without train changes. This seemingly technical detail has profound political and economic implications. The route covers 870 kilometers from Tallinn through Riga and Kaunas to the Lithuanian-Polish border. Tallinn to Riga will take just over 2 hours versus 4+ hours currently. The project includes new stations, maintenance facilities, bridges over rivers and highways, and integration with existing national rail networks. Construction began in 2020 after years of planning and political negotiations. Engineering challenges vary along the route. Estonia's section includes significant marshland requiring soil stabilization and pile foundations to prevent settling. Latvia's section crosses the Daugava River, necessitating a major bridge. Lithuania's section traverses flatter terrain, but requires numerous grade separations to eliminate conflicts with existing roads and rail lines. Everywhere, environmental considerations require careful routing to minimize impacts on forests, wetlands, and wildlife corridors. The Ülemiste terminal near Tallinn Airport is a major project component. This multimodal hub will connect Rail Baltica with the airport, urban transit, and local railways. The terminal complex includes platforms, concourses, commercial spaces, and intermodal freight facilities. Similar multimodal terminals are planned for Riga Central Station and the new Kaunas terminal, creating modern transportation hubs where passengers can seamlessly transfer between different modes. Freight is crucial to the project's economics. The Baltic states are major logistics corridors connecting Russia and Belarus with EU markets. Rail Baltica will handle freight more efficiently than existing mixed-gauge networks, potentially capturing significant business from trucks that currently carry much of the freight. Container trains will be able to move directly from the Baltics to Germany and beyond, improving competitiveness against competing routes through Poland. Geopolitical dimensions are inescapable. Rail Baltica reduces Baltic dependence on Russian rail infrastructure and deepens integration with the EU. Since Russia's invasion of Ukraine, this strategic rationale has strengthened. The Baltic states worry they could be Russia's next targets and see European integration economic, political, and infrastructure as essential to security. Rail Baltica literally and symbolically connects them to Europe while distancing them from Russia. Construction has progressed unevenly. Estonia has advanced fastest, with earthworks and bridge construction well underway. Latvia has experienced more delays due to contractor problems and some route changes. Lithuania initially lagged but has accelerated recently. As of 2024, significant portions of the route have completed earthworks, bridges are under construction, and procurement for rail systems and electrical equipment is underway. Completion targets have slipped. Originally planned to open in 2026, current schedules project 2030 for full operations. Some sections may open earlier for testing and limited services, but complete integration of all 3 countries' sections requires coordination that takes time. The project's complexity, 3 countries, multiple contractors, EU funding requirements, creates coordination challenges that frequently cause delays. Economic benefits extend beyond transportation. Construction creates thousands of jobs across the 3 countries. Property development around new stations is beginning, particularly in Estonia, where the project is most advanced. Tourism is expected to grow as the region becomes more accessible to European visitors. business connections will strengthen as travel becomes easier and cheaper. Critics question whether traffic projections are realistic. The Baltic states have small populations, combined just 6 million people, and modest economic output. Whether enough passengers and freight will use Rail Baltica to justify its costs depends on economic growth and travel patterns that are uncertain. The line might operate at a loss for years, requiring subsidies, but supporters argue strategic benefits justify costs regardless of narrow financial returns. Environmental groups have raised concerns about habitat fragmentation and impacts on protected areas. The route crosses numerous environmentally sensitive areas, requiring mitigation measures like wildlife crossing structures and habitat restoration. Some protests have occurred, particularly in Latvia, where route changes were demanded to reduce environmental impacts. These concerns have been partially addressed through design modifications and additional environmental protections. By 2026, Rail Baltica will be clearly taking shape with earthworks largely complete, major bridges under construction, and the first track laying beginning. The project demonstrates how infrastructure can serve strategic purposes beyond pure economics, connecting countries and shaping geopolitical alignments. Whether it ultimately succeeds in attracting sufficient traffic and delivering promised benefits will take years to determine, but its impact on Baltic-European integration has already been substantial. From Rail Baltica connecting the Baltics, we go to an even bigger megaproject unifying the Gulf. 6 nations of the Gulf Cooperation Council, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Bahrain, Qatar, the United Arab Emirates, and Oman are collaborating on a railway network that will revolutionize land transportation across the Arabian Peninsula. The Gulf Railway Project will create over 2,000 kilometers of new rail lines connecting member states, enabling passengers and freight to travel by rail from Kuwait to Oman, crossing some of the world's most challenging desert environments. The project originated in 2009 when GCC leaders formally approved the concept. The initial vision was ambitious, a network completed by 2018 with high-speed passenger services and substantial freight operations. Reality has proven more challenging. Coordination among 6 sovereign nations, each with different priorities, regulations, and technical standards, has been difficult. Funding disputes, route disagreements, and competing national interests repeatedly delayed progress. But by the 2020s, construction was finally advancing significantly on national sections. Saudi Arabia's network is the largest component. The kingdom is constructing the North-South Railway, connecting the capital Riyadh with aluminum smelters and phosphate mines in the north, as well as the Haramain high-speed rail connecting Mecca and Medina with Jeddah. These lines will integrate with the GCC network, providing Saudi Arabia with extensive domestic and international rail connectivity. The Mineral Railway alone spans 2,750 kilometers, demonstrating Saudi ambitions to develop rail infrastructure, matching the country's geographic scale. The UAE has made substantial progress. The Etihad rail network will eventually connect Abu Dhabi, Dubai, and Sharjah with the Saudi and Oman borders. Stage 1, connecting Abu Dhabi with gas fields and ports in the west, opened in 2016. Stage 2, extending from the Saudi border through Abu Dhabi to the Oman border and serving Dubai and other northern Emirates, is under construction with completion targeted for 2026. The network will transform freight logistics in the UAE, reducing truck traffic and providing efficient connections to regional trade partners. Qatar built substantial rail infrastructure for the 2022 World Cup, including the Doha Metro and a rail connection to Bahrain via a planned causeway. However, the diplomatic dispute between Qatar and other GCC members from 2017 to 2021 complicated integration with the broader Gulf network. Now that relations have normalized, Qatar's rail systems can be connected to the regional network, though specific timelines remain under negotiation. Kuwait's section has faced delays but progressing. The Kuwait portion will connect Kuwait City with the Saudi border, eventually linking to the Saudi network and enabling through services to Riyadh and beyond. Kuwait's flat desert terrain simplifies construction compared to mountainous regions, but extreme heat and occasional sandstorms create challenges for construction crews and require specially designed equipment. Bahrain's connection relies on a planned railway to be built alongside the existing King Fahd Causeway, linking the island nation to Saudi Arabia. This connection is critical for Bahrain's economic integration with the GCC, as the country has limited oil resources and depends heavily on trade and financial services. The rail link will facilitate commercial connections while providing Bahrainis with convenient access to Saudi Arabia and beyond. Oman's geography poses unique challenges. The country's terrain is mountainous in the north, transitioning to desert, then coastal plains along the Arabian Sea. The route from the UAE border through Oman requires substantial engineering for mountain passes, while extreme heat in desert sections demands careful design of track and equipment. Oman's section connects to the port of Sohar, a growing logistics hub handling containers and bulk commodities. Freight is central to the project's economic justification. The Gulf states import enormous quantities of goods through their ports, then distribute them by truck throughout the region. Rail can handle much of this freight more efficiently than trucks, reducing costs and road congestion. Petroleum products, minerals, containers, and bulk commodities are all candidates for rail transport. The network will enable direct rail freight from ports in the UAE to markets in Saudi Arabia, reducing logistics costs and improving supply chain efficiency. Passenger services have been emphasized in marketing, but are economically less important than freight. Several high-speed passenger services are planned, including luxury trains catering to tourists and business travelers. However, the Gulf's relatively small population and the prevalence of car ownership mean passenger traffic will likely be modest compared to freight. Nevertheless, passenger services are politically important and help build public support for the project. Technical standards have been a major challenge. Each country has different railway regulations, safety standards, and operating procedures developed for their national networks. Harmonizing these standards across 6 countries requires extensive negotiation and compromise. Signal systems, train control, electrification, and operational protocols must work seamlessly across borders. This technical coordination is as challenging as the physical construction. The project's economic benefits extend beyond direct transportation savings. Construction creates thousands of jobs and stimulates regional development along the routes. Cities and towns with rail connections gain improved access to markets and labor pools. Real estate development clusters around stations. The project enhances regional economic integration, facilitating trade and investment flows among GCC members. Environmental challenges are substantial in desert conditions. Sandstorms can cover tracks, requiring frequent maintenance and special track designs. Extreme heat affects rail expansion and contraction, requiring careful engineering to prevent buckling. Water scarcity complicates construction, as concrete production and dust suppression require substantial water. The projects incorporate environmental management plans, though implementation quality varies across countries. By 2026, several national sections will be operational or nearing completion. The UAE's Etihad Rail should be carrying freight across significant distances. Saudi Arabia's networks will be expanding. The other GCC members will have advanced their sections to varying degrees. Full integration of the entire network will take additional years, but the vision of rail-connected Gulf states is becoming tangible reality. The Gulf Railway represents a rare instance of genuine regional cooperation among Arab states. Despite political tensions and competing interests, the 6 GCC members have sustained commitment to this shared infrastructure project for over 15 years. Whether it fully delivers on ambitious promises remains to be seen, but the project is reshaping transportation geography across one of the world's most economically dynamic regions. While the Gulf is working rapidly to become connected, our next megaproject is showing no such urgency and might become the most expensive abandoned rail project ever. California. High-speed rail was supposed to revolutionize American transportation. When voters approved the project in 2008, They envisioned sleek trains whisking passengers from Los Angeles to San Francisco in under 3 hours, running entirely on renewable energy and sparking economic development across the state. The reality has been far more complicated. At a current estimated cost exceeding $128 billion and facing completion dates pushed decades into the future, California High-Speed Rail has become America's most expensive public works project and a symbol of infrastructure dysfunction. The project's origins trace to the 1990s when planners recognized California's need for improved intercity transportation. Highway congestion was worsening, air travel was overcrowded, and population growth meant both would deteriorate further. High-speed rail seemed a solution successful in Japan, France, and Spain that could serve California's linear urban geography. The state's population centers align roughly along a corridor from Sacramento through the Bay Area, Central Valley, and Los Angeles Basin to San Diego, ideal for rail service. Proposition 1A in 2008 authorized $9.95 billion in bonds for the project, with voters promised a complete system cost of $33 billion. The initial plan called for trains operating by 2020, with full service from Los Angeles to San Francisco by 2030. These projections proved wildly optimistic. Cost estimates rose steadily as detailed engineering revealed underestimated expenses. Environmental reviews delayed progress for years. Legal challenges from property owners, environmental groups, and skeptical citizens consumed time and money. Political opposition, particularly from Republicans skeptical of big government projects, created funding uncertainties. Construction finally began in the Central Valley in 2015. This section from Merced to Bakersfield was chosen because land acquisition was simpler and cheaper in the rural Central Valley than in expensive coastal cities. The strategy was to build a section that could begin operations and demonstrate viability while coastal segments were developed, but critics derided this as train to nowhere. Why would anyone take high-speed rail between small Central Valley cities when destinations passengers actually wanted required conventional rail or highway connections at both ends? The Central Valley section has proven more difficult than expected. Designs changed repeatedly, driving up costs. Contractors faced unexpected ground conditions requiring additional foundation work. Environmental mitigation protecting endangered species, managing water resources, minimizing impacts on farmland proved more complex and expensive than estimated. Relocating utilities, adjusting intersecting roads, and acquiring remaining land parcels all took longer and cost more than planned. By 2024, construction was visible across the Central Valley, with elevated structures rising, stations taking shape, and track work beginning in some areas. The High-Speed Rail Authority reports the Central Valley segment is approximately 60% complete. However, completion dates have slipped repeatedly. Current projections suggest this initial operating segment might be finished by 2030 or later, and even then would require conventional rail connections at both ends since the high-speed extensions to Merced and Bakersfield are unfunded. The Bay Area extension from Merced to San Francisco presents enormous challenges. This segment must cross mountain ranges, pass through heavily urbanized areas, and connect to San Francisco's congested downtown. Costs are estimated at over $30 billion for this section alone. Land acquisition in Silicon Valley, where property values are among world's highest, will be extraordinarily expensive. The Southern California segment from Bakersfield to Los Angeles and Anaheim is similarly challenging. This route must cross the Tehachapi Mountains, pass through Los Angeles's dense urban fabric, and integrate with existing transit systems. Costs rival the Bay Area extension. Local governments disagree about routing. Should trains run through Palmdale or via alternate routes? These disputes delay progress while costs continue escalating. Funding has been a perpetual crisis. The initial $9.95 billion in state bonds is long gone. Federal grants have provided additional billions, but political opposition in Washington limits future federal funding. The High-Speed Rail Authority repeatedly postpones completion dates, partly because funding doesn't exist for faster construction. Political dynamics are toxic. Republicans generally oppose the project as wasteful spending, proposing to redirect funds to highways or water projects. Democrats split between supporters who see it as essential infrastructure and skeptics who question whether costs can ever be justified. Governors have alternated between strong support, tepid backing, and open hostility. This political instability makes long-term planning nearly impossible. The project does have genuine supporters. Labor unions support it for construction jobs. Environmental groups see it as reducing carbon emissions by substituting for car and air travel. Central Valley communities welcome investment and improved connectivity. Business groups anticipate economic development benefits. Some transportation experts maintain that despite problems, abandoning the project would waste billions already spent, while California would still need improved inner-city transportation. Critics counter that the project is fundamentally flawed. At current cost estimates, it will never be economically viable. Ridership projections were always optimistic and have been repeatedly revised downward. The partial Central Valley segment will attract minimal ridership, validating critics' train-to-nowhere label. The money could be better spent on other transportation priorities, urban transit, conventional rail improvements, highway expansions that would deliver more benefit per dollar. Whether California high-speed rail ultimately succeeds or fails as a completed system remains uncertain. The most likely outcome is a Central Valley segment eventually operating, possibly extended incrementally toward Bay Area or Southern California as funding permits, but full completion remaining decades away. The project has become more symbol than practical transportation proof to critics that government can't execute major infrastructure, proof to supporters that political dysfunction prevents America from building as other nations do. By 2026, construction in the Central Valley will be advancing toward completing that initial segment. But the larger vision of high-speed trains connecting California's major cities remains distant, challenged by costs, politics, and fundamental questions about whether America retains the capacity to build transformative infrastructure in the 21st century. California high-speed rail's ultimate legacy as a successful if troubled project or an expensive failure won't be written for many years to come. However, back in Asia, one of the biggest success stories when it comes to fast, efficient rail lines is ready to write a new chapter. At number 1, we have perhaps the most technologically advanced transportation project on Earth. Japan's Chuo Shinkansen will be the world's fastest train, using magnetic levitation technology to reach speeds of 505 kilometers per hour, cutting travel time between Tokyo and Nagoya to just 40 minutes and eventually connecting Tokyo to Osaka in just 67 minutes. This $90 billion megaproject represents the pinnacle of railway engineering and Japan's determination to maintain its position as a global leader in transportation technology. Maglev magnetic levitation is fundamentally different from conventional trains. Rather than wheels on rails, the train hovers about 10 centimeters above the guideway, suspended by powerful magnetic forces. This eliminates friction between wheels and rails, enabling far higher speeds than conventional trains while providing an extraordinarily smooth ride. Passengers experience none of the clicking and swaying familiar from conventional trains, even at speeds exceeding 500 kilometers per hour. The technology has been in development for decades. JR Central, the private railway company building the Chuo Shinkansen, has operated a test track in Yamanashi Prefecture since the 1990s, testing trains, refining technology, and demonstrating viability. Multiple speed records have been set on this track, including an absolute rail speed record of 603 kilometers per hour in 2015. This decades-long development means the technology deploying on the Chuo Shinkansen is mature and proven, reducing risks compared to projects using unproven approaches. The route from Tokyo to Nagoya is 286 kilometers, but remarkably, 86% will be in tunnels. Japan's mountainous geography means surface routing would require constant curves and steep grades. Instead, the line will burrow through mountains in mostly straight tunnels, enabling sustained high speeds impossible on surface routes. These tunnels include some of the longest and deepest ever constructed, with sections passing hundreds of meters beneath mountains. The Oi River dispute has been the project's biggest challenge. The route passes beneath the Oi River in Shizuoka Prefecture, and the prefecture's government fears that tunneling could cause river water to leak into the tunnel, reducing surface flow and harming ecosystems and water supplies downstream. Shizuoka has withheld construction approval for its section, delaying the entire project. JR Central has proposed mitigation measures, but negotiations have been contentious. Recent political changes in Shizuoka offer hope for resolution, but the timeline remains uncertain. The second phase, extending from Nagoya to Osaka, adds 152 kilometers and brings total project cost to approximately $90 billion. This extension is planned for completion by 2037, though the Shizuoka delays may push this back. When complete, Tokyo to Osaka, Japan's two largest metropolitan areas, collectively home to over 50 million people, will be just over an hour apart. This proximity will effectively create a mega-region, integrating economic activity across the world's most productive corridor. Stations are being built in Tokyo, beneath existing Shinagawa Station, Sagamihara, Kofu, Ida, Nakatsugawa, and Nagoya. These stations are mostly underground, requiring deep excavations in dense urban or mountainous terrain. Each station is a major engineering project itself, with platforms, access tunnels, ventilation systems, and integration with existing transportation networks. The Tokyo and Nagoya stations are particularly complex, connecting to existing extensive rail systems in Japan's largest cities. Power consumption is substantial. Operating at 500+ kilometers per hour requires enormous energy, though efficiency is better than might be expected due to reduced air resistance in tunnels and the lack of friction. JR Central plans to use renewable energy where possible, though the power requirements mean the trains will draw from Japan's general grid, which includes nuclear, fossil fuel, and renewable sources. The company emphasizes that even accounting for electricity generation emissions, Maglev produces less carbon per passenger kilometer than flying or driving. The economic case rests on time savings and capacity. The existing Tokaido Shinkansen connecting Tokyo and Osaka is one of the world's busiest railway lines, carrying over 450,000 passengers daily. It operates near capacity with trains departing every few minutes during peak periods. The Chuo Shinkansen will relieve pressure on this line while offering faster service. Business travelers particularly value time savings Tokyo to Osaka in just over an hour versus 2.5 hours on conventional Shinkansen makes day trips practical and transforms business connections. Seismic resilience is critical. Japan experiences frequent earthquakes, including potentially catastrophic ones. The Maglev system includes sophisticated sensors detecting seismic waves, automatically slowing trains when earthquakes are detected. The guideway structure is designed to withstand powerful shaking. Tunnels deep underground are often safer during earthquakes than surface structures, though the possibility of tunnel collapse is always a concern. Japanese engineering standards are among the world's strictest for seismic safety, and the Chuo Shinkansen incorporates the latest technologies. The project demonstrates Japan's commitment to cutting-edge infrastructure despite an aging population and massive public debt. Critics question whether such an expensive project makes sense for a country facing demographic decline and fiscal challenges. Supporters argue that infrastructure investments pay off over decades, that Japan must maintain technological leadership, and that the existing Tokaido Shinkansen's age and capacity constraints require new solutions. The debate reflects broader questions about Japan's economic future and priorities. Construction is proceeding in authorized sections. Tunneling is underway in areas outside Shizuoka, with tunnel boring machines grinding through mountains and stations taking shape. JR Central reports making progress despite the delays, positioning the project to move quickly once Shizuoka approval is obtained. The target opening date of 2027 has slipped to the 2030s, with some estimates suggesting 2034 or later for the Tokyo-Nagoya segment. International interest is substantial. The United States, particularly the Northeast Corridor, has been mentioned as a potential Maglev market. though American projects face severe political and funding challenges. Other countries, including India and various Middle Eastern nations, have expressed interest. Japan sees maglev exports as a strategic priority, and the Chuo Shinkansen serves as a showcase demonstrating the technology at commercial scale. The Chuo Shinkansen represents the ultimate expression of high-speed rail, the fastest, most advanced passenger trains ever conceived, operating through some of the world's longest tunnels in one of the most earthquake-prone regions, built to exacting standards by a society known for engineering excellence. It's a statement that rail transportation can still push technological boundaries and remain relevant in an age of air travel and autonomous vehicles. When the line finally opens, passengers will experience transportation unlike anything else, levitating through tunnels at speeds exceeding 500 kilometers per hour, arriving at destinations in times that seem impossibly short. The Chuo Shinkansen will stand as a testament to what's possible when mature technology, patient development, substantial investment, and technical expertise combine in pursuit of transportation excellence. It's the #1 mega project under construction for good reason no other project so perfectly combines scale, technology, and ambition to reshape how millions of people will travel. From the line's controversial linear city to Japan's magnetic levitation railway, these 26 mega projects represent trillions of dollars in construction investment and in some of the most ambitious undertakings in human history. They're reshaping cities, connecting regions, generating clean energy, and pushing the boundaries of what's technically possible. Some will succeed brilliantly, others will face challenges, delays, and criticism, but all of them demonstrate humanity's enduring drive to build, to connect, and to shape the world we live in. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you're subscribed to Signum as we keep following these projects as they progress and bring you more insane stories from the world of mega construction.